Everybody, I am going to take a second here to make sure everything's up and running. Oh my goodness, there's already a few of you retweeting everything. Thank you. But yeah, as always, we'll start off with just a quick check that all the settings are working the way they should. Okay, interesting. Now, I don't seem to be able to hear myself. Hey, Elgrins. Out of curiosity, are you able to hear me? Because I noticed that I'm not actually able to hear anything um, on Twitch, which is wonderful for me under normal circumstances. You are able to hear me. Interesting. So for whatever reason, I'm not able to hear. Interesting. Oh, there we go. Great. Sorry, there was one other thing I was meaning to check. And then get our settings in as well. So one thing I wanted to say right off the bat is that it seems that a number of people are finding the channel through Terra Invicta on YouTube. And so, of course, to the YouTube crowd, I must apologize because I know it's very infuriating to start a video and have just a bunch of kind of puff at the start. But this is primarily a live broadcast, and I upload those to, up to YouTube. And I think it's fair to say that I go on quite a few digressions in that. So if you are looking for something that is 100% focused on gameplay, and particularly for sort of high level or optimized play, it may be something you want to check out elsewhere. But I did want to take a quick second to say, for those of you that have found the channel through Terra Invicta, thank you for stopping by. I was delighted to sort of see how well this game was received. And not least of which because I've been a Kickstarter backer for this game way back when they opened it up. In fact, I was following it before then because there had been some rumors that, well, I guess not rumors, that Pavonis had put something on their forums saying that they were working on a sort of grand strategy style game. But Hooded Horse did reach out and provide a key, before early access. And so I have had this opportunity to sort of stream the game a little bit earlier, and certainly I'm very happy that Hooded Horse has kind of given me an opportunity with a few games now. This would, include Old World, which I do hope to get back to, but I want to do some good time in Terra Invicta, and it's certainly something that I think a lot of people are really interested in. And then Clanfolk, among a number of other games. If you haven't checked out that publisher, definitely a very interesting one. I'm really happy that they've been able to sort of reach out and hopefully they've been getting the coverage they've been looking for here. But it is of course always good to note these sorts of things because this one's a little bit more complicated because I was a Kickstarter backer. So in a sense, like I have, put down the money on it, but I think it is fair to say even a little bit of, early access to the game to stream it is probably one of those things that's worth disclosing. And certainly I'm very happy with Terra Invicta, but I've always hoped that I can connect people with games that they're interested in. And one of the things I'm always worried about is that my enthusiasm for games sometimes will, lead to people picking up something that they become disappointed in, and that's always a tough one. And I recognize that sometimes the parting of money may affect someone's perceptions of that. That was something that seemed to be really clear when there was a demo available for Lucifer Within Us. People actually seemed to value that game less because part of the game was available for free, and the reviews for the game actually started going up as the once the demo went away, which is a very curious phenomena, which I don't think is recognized enough among the thinkfluencers in the indie space. Either way, that is a conversation for another time. I've been really looking forward to this. There is one thing that I will draw people's attention to on this game because this is something that we talked about a little bit before, but I wanted to highlight. I also wanted to just take a quick look and see if some things have been updated on here. So there is a developer-run wiki for the game. I'll actually zoom things in a bit. So this is hoodedhorse.com/wiki/terra_invicta. /main_page. And this is the official community wiki. So I suspect that there's been some updates going in. I showed the beginner's guide before, and it had some recommendations in terms of where to put your counselors, what sort of traits you're looking for, how it all works. I noticed that on Steam there was I'm really bad at remembering it's Perrin Gaming AU. Sorry, it's the first part I'm always. And then I believe Potato McWhiskey is another big strategy YouTuber, and I think they were both doing some more guidance style videos. So if you're looking to sort of learn the game, not only has the developer provided some resources, or the publisher in this case has provided some resources, but there's an increasing number of kind of community resources which are being made available to work on the game. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into the save. But what I'm particularly interested in is, I suspect it would be the first month. No, actually, it would be the first months are industrializing space. So we've been working pretty well with our resources. There we go, industrializing space. So we've managed to unexpectedly secure the United States. And I felt a little foolish in terms of how things turned out with Russia, especially because there was someone who I hosted the last time after we did this who seemed to have an incredibly high cap. And I really feel like if we had had both Russia and the United States in our pocket, we would have been unstoppable as far as this overall goal is concerned. So that's maybe a lesson for next time, but that's a secondary thing for me to consider. But this is going to be what we're focusing on for this particular session tonight, I think. So let's take a quick second here and see what the community resource says. So overview, industrializing space by establishing mines and production facilities is necessary in the long term for most factions, especially ones antagonistic to the aliens. Space industry will enable you to extract useful resources as well as earn money from space, receive research points and research bonuses from space, build fleets of warships to defend yourself, and, if playing as a faction who wants to do so, fight the aliens and protect the Earth. Later on, you will even be able to found colonies in space and on other planets. Boost, as mentioned above, is a resource used to launch space stations and surface outposts into space and other space bodies. Boost is used to pay the maintenance costs of stations and outposts that require resources to maintain them, like water and volatiles, but which aren't being produced in space and so have to be launched to the facility from Earth. It is important to note here that while space stations in orbit around Earth can be useful early in the game, they require boost to maintain and can hamper your ability to collect enough boost to start mining resources. These resources could then be used to maintain space stations and habitats, meaning they don't need boost to maintain, so it makes sense to start mining first and then expand your space stations. So this is actually something which, without explicitly deciding to, well, not entirely. There are a couple of, there is one thing that I had done previously to set up a space asset in the demo, and I decided that the space asset wasn't really getting me enough to be worth it. So this time around I didn't do it, but I maybe didn't have quite the rationale that this wiki suggested here, but I'm glad that we're on the right track for that. Mission control determines the capacity of ships and facilities you can keep running outside of the Earth. Mission controls are built on Earthbound nations using the mission control priority to invest in them, or by direct investment. Later in the game, mission controls can also be built in space. Mission controls are best established in smaller countries that you control, but plan to unify into a larger country later. Now that's interesting. I'm curious. This is incidentally, so for those of you wondering why I'm sort of the way I am about backseating, or why I sometimes don't necessarily like reading online guides about games, it's statements like this. So mission controls are best established in smaller countries that you control but plan to unify into a larger country later. So I can see there can, let me put it to you this way. I guess adumbrate some, sorry, that's wrong. That's a term I didn't need to use for so I'm struggling to think of the right term, and that's not a commonly used one. I have like a mental model for why that might be true. Let's say there's like the outline that I can get of why this might be useful. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to take that advice and build a structure around it um, to justify that particular bit of advice. What I prefer, and this is one of the so number one, it's just fun to learn complicated games on your own, and that's kind of what I'm doing here. But the other thing is that you don't learn anything by being told build it in small countries so they can be integrated. Like, what is it about the process of integration that gives you the advantage? Is it the idea that if you build a number of small mission controls in smaller countries, that in total, once you create the big blob, you now have multiple mission controls, which you wouldn't be able to build inside of the large blob on its own? That's one completely legitimate way of looking at that. Another one might be that if you have the big blob, the rate at which you acquire mission controls is smaller than if you have the resources of individual nations moving towards it. These are some ways that those might work. But the thing is that to just be told, do X, it doesn't actually teach you anything. It just, you kind of, you're Stanley in the Stanley Parable, right? The button, the image comes up and you push the button. And so this is one of the reasons why I can be very annoying when it comes to the type of advice that I ask for or I listen to, which is that, if you want to do interesting things in a game and if you want to discover new things about games, oftentimes what you want to do is step outside those ruts of so like I guess one of the first ones was that everybody always tried to unify the EU and sort of move on, and it seems like there's a few different strategies now. And the thing is that if people always tell you, just always unify the EU, it's like, well, why do you do that? And the reason you do that is because you will have a lower impact on your ability to sort of control nations. So the problem I'm running into with North America is that I've got the United States, the most powerful and technologically advanced nation. That's a really strong position to be building from. But there is the catch that I don't have this ability to sort of reach out into other parts of the world, and that's going to be sort of ceded to other forces who might be more hostile towards me. So it's like, well, why, so again, what's the trade-off here? It's like, well, to understand why combining the European Union, which again is it's a viable strategy, and I think it's actually probably not a bad option if you can do it. It's one that's very good early on in the game because generally you can work quite well within smaller countries, and that builds up your ability to take places like France and Germany. But to just say unify the EU, you're missing out on the opportunity to learn about how all these different systems interact in terms of being able to sort of sway opinion, why it's easier to take over certain countries once you've met certain conditions, and of course, how that cap works and how you can lower the impact. And that's one of the reasons why I focus on this sort of stuff. Anyway, sorry, it's a long rant, but I figure, especially just because I know sometimes I seem really mean about this sort of stuff. It's the big reason why I have my very stubborn way of playing particular games, because for me, a lot of the fun is actually being able to appreciate exactly how all these different complex systems work together. And to Cree, very good to see you. I hope you're doing well. It was a long weekend for us here in Canada. It's Thanksgiving weekend, but I was obviously working quite hard. But I know I missed last week, so I wanted to make sure that we did at least one stream tonight. Okay, as your space industry develops, you will probably go from being limited by boost to being limited by mission control. Note that you can go over your mission control cap, but this will make your stations, outposts, and ships vulnerable to subversion by other factions as well as negative events. Starting requirements. The main requirement is having enough boost as well as some mission control. A good starting point is about 40 to 60 boost and having about 2 to 4 mission control available. One mine will require 2 mission control. This might be so. This is definitely the kind of addition that I find very helpful. Heuristics like that, you might actually think that this is the sort of thing that I get annoyed by. I actually do like heuristics like that, to say it's like a good place to start is around 40 to 60 and then 2 to 4. And the distinction that I make between that and just outright telling people what to do is that it's giving you an anchor in terms of your levels. So like if you're sitting on 200 boost, it means that you've been saving up too much. And if you have, one mission control and you want to start, trying to build out a bunch of industry in space, again, you're probably making a mistake. And you can decide to sort of kick against those boundaries. But given that you are potentially putting yourself in a situation where you may be lowering the acquisition rate in terms of boost if you build too early, I do actually tend to think that these sorts of heuristics are useful, because I think in these cases it's quite clear that it's like, yeah, this is a ballpark that you're looking for, but you don't need to think of it as a commandment. Whereas, again, like I said, this is, build mission control in a smaller country. That is, again, I don't want to suggest like it's a commandment as in that like I feel that I will lose the game if I do otherwise, but I've got nothing else to build on that. Whereas here it's sort of saying is like, if you want to build a mine, you need 2 mission control. So if you don't have 2 mission control, you're potentially going to see that asset stolen from you. All right, you will also need the following techs as well as the projects that unlock from them. And all right, I actually put my tablet that I normally keep these kinds of notes on charge, but I should have some analog material. All right, so we need mission to space, outpost tabs, advanced electromagnetism, mass drivers, space mining and refining, platform core, and nuclear fission in space. Although that's for mine apparently, or it's Mars apparently. To build an outpost on a site on a space body, you must have prospected it first by sending a probe. Sending a probe to a body costs boost, takes some time, and requires the appropriate global technology to be researched. Mission to the Moon or mission to Mars. Note that the space body itself is called Luna in the game and will be referred to as Luna from now on. More of these techs become available later to mine and colonize other areas of the solar system, as well as technologies and projects for larger, more efficient facilities. Prospecting with a single probe will reveal the resource outposts of all potential outpost sites on a space body. The site can produce any amount of any or all of the following: water, blue droplets, volatiles, red flame, base metals, light blue pile of bricks, noble metals, yellow pile of bricks, fissiles, green radioactivity symbol. The amount of resources a site produces is randomly generated within certain upper and lower bounds. Some bodies, like Ceres and Europa, tend to have plenty of water because of the presence of water ice, while on Luna, water is relatively rare. Although I don't think that's true in our case. I actually think there was a pretty decent water location. Well, it's relative, right? So I suspect that even like if I compare it to Ceres, that there's probably going to be less water on Luna. Water and volatiles are used to maintain stations and outposts, while base metals as well as noble metals are mainly used to build them. Fission piles require fissiles. An important concept to understand how space industry works is that while resources needed from Earth cost boost to send, space resources go into a pool that is shared by all your space stations and outposts without transfer times or other costs. For example, if you are mining water on Mars, that water is immediately available for a space station in Earth orbit. It may help you to think of the solar system as split into two resource pools, Earth and space. Your goal is to start mining and accumulating enough of these materials that you can start launching just cores from Earth using boost and then completing the base using the 5 space resources, which saves time and huge amounts of boost. Your first mine. There are 2 approaches for where to start. 1, building a mine or 2 on Luna and then proceeding to Mars using the resources from Luna. Or 2, going directly to Mars. Note that mission to Mars does not require mission to the Moon. There's no hard and fast rule for which approach is better in a given game. Key is to be able to start mining for water, volatiles, base metals, and noble metals in space, as these are required to build more mines. The cores and power plants to power all of this can also require fissiles, but you can also use boost to build these if you have enough of it. On one hand, skipping Luna can make sense if it does not have 2 mining sites available that produce all 5 resources. On the other hand, you need an extra project, fission piles, to mine on Mars, as you would need an impractical amount of solar collectors to produce enough power due to Mars's distance from the sun. Mars will always be richer to mine than Luna, but costs more boost to send outposts to. It is also harder for counselors to travel all the way to Mars, e.g., to try and take over an outpost. This might actually be good for me to consider in terms of, securing my position. If I can claim Mars, then that would mean that it's harder for other people to take that from me as well. A mine, including a core and power plant on Luna, should cost somewhere in the ballpark of 20 to 40 boost. A mine on Mars should cost somewhere in the ballpark of 40 to 70 boost. If the cost on Mars is way more than this, note whether Mars is in or near the launch window. Launch windows refer to dates when a target in space is aligned with Earth's orbit in such a way that it takes less boost to get there than normally. It may be worth it to wait a month or 2 for the launch window to get closer. You can also research the nuclear freighters project, unlocked by solid core fission systems to lower boost costs. That is, I should expect this for this game by now, but that is actually really cool that they bothered to figure out, that they bothered to include the fact that there are better and worse times in which to do these sorts of things. Like it's this idea of technology that there are probably some technologies that we could realize but don't because they are too costly. And of course, in this particular case here, it's instead of just assuming that technology is impossible, what it says here is like, well, if you feel that the resources of the nation should be directed towards this thing, we're not here to stop you. You're running things, but it's probably a bad idea to waste all of this effort. I think that's a really neat idea. All right, your first mine will be simple and have the following components. An outpost core. Sorry, I'll write these down. An outpost mining complex and a power plant. If you have the boost, you can deploy all of these in a single go, and this is preferable since the mine will be up and running simultaneously with the outpost core. The mine will cover most of the maintenance requirements of the outpost itself, meaning it won't cost too much boost to maintain, and will start providing the resources to build more. Note that one outpost can support only one mine. It will take several weeks for the components to make their way to Luna, several months to Mars. If you have plenty of boost, you can send another mine even before the first one is finished. And then expansion, we might as well, it's the end of this line on the wiki, so we might as well get through this one as well. Once you've started mining for all 5 resources, you can change your approach by only sending the outpost core to a site using boost, and then building the fission pile and mining complex using resources from the space resource pool instead of boost. Later on, you can build a construction module on any station or outpost in the planetary system. You will be able to build outpost cores using space resources within that system. At that point, mission control capacity will start hampering your progress rather than boost. As you progress down the tech tree, you will be able to add more mission control in space with Operation Center modules. You may want to aim for the mission to the asteroids technology, as asteroids have plenty of resources as well, and mission to the inner planets, as solar collectors are more powerful the closer you are to the sun, which makes outpost layouts more efficient. Another thing to aim for is the next tier of surface outpost called HABs, unlocked by the tech settlement HABs, as well as the next tier of mines and power plants. And then it's time to start thinking about space docks, shipyards, warships, and point defense modules to keep everything safe, which will probably be a point that we consider in a future playthrough, because I have a feeling that we will have a lot on our plate already. So I did want to take the time to go over that just because it does help me sort of set the table in terms of what I'm trying to achieve, and it's actually kind of nice to get just a checklist in terms of technologies, because the technology tree can sometimes be quite intimidating in this game. I realize it's been about a half hour of setup, and there is going to be a little bit of review of the position that we left in before, but I am trying to keep some of these I'm trying to do as much of the gameplay as I can. This is also my opportunity to learn the game, and this is normally how I learn games. I almost went to 24, but it's 26. I will note that I have been playing as the initiative on my own time. Oh yes, we'll also be talking a bit about research when the time comes. But I should also note that there have been a number of updates released since I played this game last, so I'll take a quick look and just see if there's anything to... So, event illustrations. Definitely some balance. Oh. What happened to the music? How are you all doing tonight? I always feel a little self-conscious when the music goes away. There we go. It's back. All right, so it looks like we were working on assignments as well, but maybe we'll leave that all aside. Okay, let's just do a quick rundown. So Czech Republic and Turkey have ended their alliance. I believe this is the servants running amok. I'll take a quick look at what's going on there. Okay. Project Exodus got Israel, no doubt, for their boost. So we're doing good for mission control, which does mean that we want to set up our base on Luna sooner than later. Sorry, there's a side of me that kind of wants to read all of these out loud, but a lot of this is just kind of catching up with some stuff that we knew before. Large typhoon. Okay, that's fine. We finished mission to Mars. North Korea has canceled upcoming missile tests. Okay. That's a decent enough place to start. I think I'm probably just going to commit to whatever we were looking at before. Yeah, so the initiative have all of Korea. I would not be surprised if we find that Turkey is completely in, servants' hands. And they're holding on to it pretty carefully. And one thing I could try and do is exert a bit of influence over the United Kingdom, take advantage of these... well, I suppose there's only one slot available to me. So Nancy Ford's currently doing an investigation. Well, then again, there's not a whole lot else for Ford to be doing right now, I suppose.
Acknowledged.
So yeah, we're trying to take the executive in the United States. That's fine.
Ready for orders.
Reporting in.
Looks like Ruby we tried to... I feel like we can do better. Oh, maybe not.
Ready to go. At your service.
No, we have a purge. So if we were to try purging... It's 11%. I mean, we can throw some influence at it, but I don't really want to. 29 in the Czech Republic. I mean, the UK is obviously a more natural ally in a lot of cases. So my better chance would be in Norway. But maybe it's not about the better chance. Yeah, we'll start in the UK.
Power.
So there's one other thing that I would... Oh, doing all right. Reading the rulebook for the follow tabletop RPG on the side. I wonder who wound up getting that for you. I hope it is everything that you were looking forward to.
Where to?
So one of the other things that I think is worth considering when it comes to... Oh, hang on.
We should make every effort to understand the nation's social and economic situation.
We've definitely read this before. I'm not quite ready to say don't show this again, but I'll just hide it. Okay, but yeah, one of the things that I wanted to do was to go to that list of nations again. So one thing that I might want to consider would be, okay, what is one of my big goals right now? Well, obviously, more boost is always a good thing. So I suppose one thing that I might say would be, all right, well, let's sort by boost. And is there a way that I could be earning more based on sort of free territory? And like really it's China that is the big untapped location. In fact, given the fact that the servants are very popular here, this might be something that I actually want to dedicate some resources towards. It also seems like the academy's sort of lost a little bit of space in Japan as well, so I could potentially make an effort there. But I actually think it wouldn't be a bad default option for me to try and put a presence in China, given that I already sort of retreated from Russia. So the other thing that I might consider would be, it's like, well, right now I haven't been throwing my weight around as far as the research is concerned. So where are the options, not just in terms of taking other people's... I don't want to just take the research, or I don't want to be taking stuff from other people. What I want to be doing is focusing on where are the easy gains for me. So China is one, but it also seems like India is a fairly decent spot. Now, there's two reasons why China is a little bit more attractive to me right now. Number one, it's larger and it's got a, it has a number of different things that make it a desirable target. But it's also the idea of denying it to the servants, and so I'm a little bit more inclined to try and hang on there. I'm also just taking a quick look at the servants. This looks like they're focused on Italy, Turkey. They have some presence in France, which is a bit concerning. We could probably kick them out of Iran. Yeah, there's some potential here. But yeah, that's the other thing, is that if I can, I'd like to be able to sort of throw my weight around a little bit and using science more, which is something that we'll talk about a bit later. But again, it's good to try and work out some priorities before going too nuts in terms of the future steps. It also occurred to me that I don't actually have Canada yet, so we'll have to work on that. You're gonna say the cuisine? Oh, but the appeal for taking the UK, or was it somewhere else you were thinking? Sorry, I'm totally not paying attention. Maybe attractive to try and take Ireland at some point. Oh, for China, gotcha. Okay, sorry, there was another thing I was going to consider. Right, it was this control points. So we are currently managing control points with a value of 147.5263 against our cap of 173. Exceeding this cap will reduce our influence income and make enemy missions targeting our control points much more likely to succeed. We may abandon control points to reduce this cost, or increase our cap through research, or increasing our counselor's administration, command, and persuasion. Okay, so that's going to be one that I consider in future. So we want high admin, command, and persuasion. And in fact, administration can be quite attractive because that also gives us an ability to buy different organizations to improve things like our operations and such. Anyway, one way or the other, let's confirm the assignments. And let's just make this... Okay, so for whatever reason, we're not participating in the race. So, I mean, so far a lot of this stuff is kind of in line with what we wanted in terms of the techs that they said that we needed for mining. Mass drivers are currently being researched. We've also got nuclear fission in space, which would enable Mars mining. In fact, if anything, I kind of want to slow that down because I want to be working on other things. Mission to space. Okay, we've got that. Outpost Habs, we've got that. Advanced electromagnetism, we've got that. Mass drivers is being researched. Space mining and refining. Interesting. That is currently not researched, it looks like. So that's going to be one for me to focus on. Platform core. Now we got one here. Okay. So yeah, there is a component that we're apparently going to need before we can make progress anyway. So space mining and refining. I mean, the challenge here is that maybe space mining and refining is like something for us specifically to research. Okay, so yeah, we've completed platform core, which was internal to us. Okay, so the prerequisite for that all completed. Okay, yeah, so that's going to be the one that we use. So there's going to be two things that we're focusing on in terms of setting the agenda. That's going to be unifying the world's nations, and then also being able to build up our off-world industry. So with all of that in mind, we're ready to unpause. You know, again, half an hour of chat, but there is a reason behind that, and we'll see if we can kind of double down on our position in the world. There's a couple things that I can try and do in the interim as well, and that is to sort of build alliances and sort of treaties. So, for instance, Humanity First, I might want to try and boot them out of Central America, you know, just sort of so because I can. But it would be nice to it would like to be able to work out some kind of arrangement with them so that I don't need to worry about being kind of being ambushed. Hello, Vanguard Master. Yes, I am, and I hope you got some proper sleep lately, because I know you've been working pretty hard this weekend. So yeah, so it looks like Humanity First might be making moves both on India and China. Alien Fleet Victor 5 completes transfer. Alien Fleet Victor 5 has achieved low Earth orbit 1. Let's go there. It's still paused, so we can unpause there. Be nice if it had a little bit more of an explanation in terms of missing acceleration TT. Yeah, that doesn't tell me anything. Yeah, no problem, Vanguard Master. I mean, I live in perpetual fear whenever I try and help something out, whether that's as like a quote-unquote influencer or, you know, in terms of people asking for advice on stuff. I always kind of live in the fear that the advice just isn't good and that it wastes people's time. But so I'm always reluctant to accept the thank yous just because, you know, I don't know if it was helpful or not, but I'm glad that you found it useful in some way, and I hope it serves you well. I don't think I expressed confusion about that point, and boy, it would be nice if I could just play the game on my own. Alright, UFO crashes on Earth. An alien vessel has crashed down in the Kunming region of China. While the wreckage is unrecoverable, we suspect that an alien life form has escaped into the surrounding countryside. And also one in Guatemala. While the wreckage is unrecoverable, we suspect that an alien life form has escaped into the surrounding countryside. So I think probably better to focus on Guatemala first. Although I think I've got 2 people who are capable of doing those kinds of investigations.
Mission cancelled.
Okay, we've been having this happen a little bit more often. What happened in Spain? Initiated a space flight program. Okay. It is actually kind of... This is one thing I was never entirely sure. Like, it's implied by what the, you know, what the different priorities for countries can be. But I was always a little curious whenever it comes down to other countries, right? Because so much of this game takes place sort of off-world. The whole idea of like capturing these countries that have already invested in terms of space programs, like there's 2 big reasons to do that, which is number 1, not just to augment your own abilities, but also to deny those resources to opponents. But it does also raise some questions in terms of your ability, like if you happen to be unlucky, like we, you know, obviously we were earlier on, you know, we'd sort of been trying this approach to get the United States, and then we sort of found out we were locked out of Canada, which in fairness, you know, Canada is not exactly going to be rocking our boost. But are there problems with the audio? Or is this just a Vanguard Master thing? But in any case, like this was a great example of something that was maybe not necessarily going to work out for us. And so, you know, you would imagine, because it's a game and generally you want games to be fun, that there should be some alternative available to you that doesn't, you know, that basically you being locked out of a powerful country with a space program shouldn't mean game over. That essentially you're waiting, for an extended period of time to just lose. But on the other hand, I'm not really that familiar with how space programs get formed in the game. And I mean, it is still fair to say I don't necessarily know whether or not it's viable to rely on a space program that you've built from the ground up. But it's sort of nice to see that indicator there. And one thing that we want to do now is to take a quick look at, I'm not going to pause, but I will slow things down. We're actually going to take a quick look at the priorities and just see how that was achieved. Okay, so perhaps unsurprisingly, when the servants are taking a spot, they are just completely destabilizing the country. The Academy, on the other hand, are going to invest in things. Now, it's interesting that there's still a lot that's going into spoils. But yeah, so high investments in boost and mission control. Now, that'll be kind of interesting to compare how we've done. Now, I've done sort of my own little custom breakdown, and that does have, I do have the one big negative, which is to underinvest in corruption. The reason that's a negative is because people do want their piece of the pie, and I'm making those people angry. Interestingly enough, the economy is falling. So GDP, nation's GDP, or gross domestic product, is a measure of its annual economic input in US dollars adjusted by purchasing power parity. The nation's GDP determines how many control points a nation has, how many investment points it produces, and how difficult certain missions are. I always thought that it explained how that changed. Because obviously GDP is going to be affected by a number of different things. Well, I suppose we are underinvesting in the economy relative to what the default for the US was. But I'm living with that because, I mean, in the end, the nations in this game are just something for me to enact my policies.
We're winning their hearts and minds.
Okay, so happy enough to see public campaign in the United States working out. We'll hit continue because I think I'm going to start moving people. I think I'm going to start moving people to some other tasks moving forward. Now this is an interesting one. Oh no, sorry, this is Myanmar. Sorry, for some reason I thought the servants had this, but it's probably Thailand. Yeah. So interestingly enough, for whatever reason, the servants did not go full spoils here and instead decided to pick up spaceflight program. Oh, come on, Siri. We've lost the corporation's control point in Mexico to the Protectorate. Many of our people are no longer responding to our communications, and we've lost a significant amount of power over events there. Now, I mean, we had to kind of expect that that was going to happen, given that we abandoned Mexico. Now, one of the drawbacks is that we committed to that decision earlier, and it's something that I would maybe have wanted to undo. The way I'm going to get around that is essentially we're going to slowly rebuild and retake Mexico for ourselves. But obviously this now means that my counselors are going to be... it does mean that my counselors are going to be sort of spent undoing some choices that I made earlier on based on the kind of surprise success of the control points.
Our presence is growing.
I have gained... Control nation. Yes, okay, we got the executive. So, oh, actually, that also pushed us over the edge. Not enough for me to like completely freak out, but it does sort of highlight why I'm going to want to start unifying sooner rather than later. All right, I've gained a control point for the resistance of the United States of America. We now have 6 out of 6 control points there. Executive power over this nation now belongs to the resistance.
We are in control now.
Well, that complicates things, but I'm kind of happy that we had some luck in the UK. And Army under Resistance control. The 3rd Infantry Division is now under the control of the Resistance. Our control point in the United States of America would be better protected from enemy purges with a defend interest mission. Well, that's definitely something that we want to focus on. So let's start by taking a look at these organizations we can pick up. So we've got the Deneb Engineering Group. We also have Lacerda Spacecraft. Both of these we can afford to buy on our own. Lynx Instruments, which only seems available for Weimao Jiang. And the reason for that is... doesn't seem to say... maybe it's just... oh, it's a number of spots available. Okay, I'm basically going to buy all of them. But we'll see if there's anything... if there's like a particular order. Nope, not really. At some point, I'm probably going to work out a better system for, for sorting this all out. But for now, basically acquiring as many organizations as I can. This, incidentally, is one big reason why I'm quite likely to boot Irina Borisova out of the organization after a while, because the lack of administration is definitely something that's going to be hurting my my cap. But let's think a little bit about some next steps. So for, 2 priorities that I want to work on are investigating these crashdown sites. So we've got one here.
Investigating alien site.
What's the op?
What's the op?
All
Where
right.
do you need me?
Next up, we definitely want to hurt the... we definitely want to hurt
Ready.
the Protectorate.
Ready. At your service. Standing by.
Ready for my mission.
Actually, it just occurred to me, we don't have the influence for Protect Interests, so...
Your orders?
okay, that's a 17...
Ready.
Where do you need me?
That's more like it.
Targeting the opposition.
Where do you need me?
Now, we're nowhere near where we need to be for taking China. But I mean, the question would be, do I want to build that infrastructure now, or do I focus on Canada again?
Reporting in.
We've got 2 persuasive
go.
individuals. Okay,
Where
here's
to?
what I'll do. I'll put... it's not a great chance of success.
I will tell our story.
I'm
What's
not
the op?
not expecting huge things.
Making our case.
All right, we'll lock that in for now. Obviously, I'll have 2 people available next turn once we're done investigating. But I think this is how I want to play it for the next little while. The biggest thing that I need to focus on are these is this admin cap. Now, we did get the information before in terms of saying that admin command and persuasion are things that will
I
help
will
us the
report when my
most.
mission is complete.
So actually,
Laying
maybe
the groundwork.
what we can do here. So it's pretty clear that Hairong Y is one of my persuasion superstars. So I think this makes sense to maybe try and invest a bit in their capabilities, although I think probably it's going to cost us. Nope, we can get a bit more out of that, so you are now more persuasive. This is a little bit harder to justify because, you know, Weimao is capable of a number of things. Now, maybe what we want to do is take a look at the different types of missions they can do. So Control Nation and Public Campaign, both are persuasion focused. I don't really think there's a situation... Like, we have the option of stealing it, but they're not that good at... You know, Inspire is probably also persuasion. Yeah, so it sucks that I'm doubling down on persuasion, but it is actually something that will allow me to accomplish, like, not just accomplish the missions, but it's actually something that will allow me to accomplish more as far as that cap. So we are going to continue to invest in persuasion. Now, Arena, I think her main benefit was her ability to sort of conduct operations. So that is Command, Purge is Espionage. So this is one of the bigger challenges, is that we actually have, like, we're kind of splitting our attention over this. Command is the more attractive because of what it gets me for my admin cap. I think I'm going to increase the command, even though it makes me feel a little dirty. Now, Nancy Ford. I guess we were putting into the science. I have a feeling I'm going to wind up sort of parking them in the state. Well, you know what? That's fine. I think I'll. I think I am actually just going to keep pushing the science with her. And then Ruby Byrne was definitely somebody I was using for her operation. I wonder, I'm trying to think if Purge was changed or if I'm mistaking this for another ability. Anyway, this one I think I'm going to split it between Command and Espionage. Yeah, so slowly creeping up on that number, but not quite where I need it to be. Okay, so those are the points for now. Whether they were good decisions or not, they're the ones that I made. And we'll see the fallout. There is a side of me that wants to try and take the PM's office and Ireland while we're in the UK.
We've moved the needle.
Okay. I'm not quite ready to put them on repeat yet. I should also be taking a look.
Our case remains unheard.
Okay, I think this one I am going to make a permanent assignment, because we're really just rolling the dice on this. Now, one thing I want to take a look at, this is obviously fairly early on into the research effort, and I'm curious to see... So we've contributed 342, that's almost twice what the Academy has, so I think I'm going to pull back a little bit on the research. And in fact, what I'm going to do here, so I'm going to say we've contributed 342 on October 25th. And then the next time we check this, I want to see sort of what the daily rate is. So 172 Exodus. And, oh, sorry, that's Academy. 75 Exodus. And essentially what I'm trying to do here, so my preference is to put as much towards my own organization efforts. But what I'm trying to infer here is just sort of like a daily rate that the that the enemy's contributing. And so, we've got a nice big advantage here as far as the contributions. But eventually what I want to do is to just try and like really push the amount that I'm putting into all of them, so I can control the global research agenda. Whether or not I can achieve that is another question.
Assimilating rather than exterminating other nations. But we should not forget that their siege weapons were terrible things to behold. History is littered with accounts of opponents simply surrendering as they watched Roman catapults approaching their walls. Colonel Hans Castillo guest lectured to officer candidates.
No matter the technological advancements we might yet make, our ability to voyage through the stars will be inherently limited by what the human body can endure. Mind resources are not, however, at the risk of liquefied internal organs during high-speed space transit. Mass drivers employ electromagnetic acceleration to essentially hurl unmanned cargo through space at breathtaking speeds, charging and then firing their payloads in the manner of a catapult, albeit one fueled by vast amounts of electricity and capable of firing its shots across millions of kilometers. While mass drivers are not a new concept, our latest breakthroughs enable us to instantaneously feed them for greater quantities of energy than ever before, thus enabling the rapid long-distance transport of exponentially greater masses. The most immediate practical application of mass drivers is to ferry essential and precious materials mined from asteroids and other heavenly bodies back to Earth with a minimum of delay. This technology will bring about a sea change in our ability to replenish and grow our local resource stores. Further research should be able to refine and even miniaturize the concepts behind mass drivers in hopes of integrating them into weapons capable of truly devastating punch. The following technologies may now be researched: space mining and refining, which I believe is something we were looking for. So good news there. And let's see what the research agenda shows. Perfect. So I think I actually have a little no, you know what? Let's do what we can. Let's try and split. Actually, we can even get a little bit of a okay, so it's the 26th of well, that's only one day, but even then, so it looks like it's five that's being contributed by the Academy and 5 by Exodus. So even split among 3 efforts, we're contributing more than these other 2. So I probably don't want to go for a 3rd or 4th here, but it is something. Yeah, I don't know. I'm gonna split with the 3 priorities for now. Like, I'm not married to it. We'll obviously check in a little bit later. I've learned some useful information from my investigation of the UFO crashdown site in Guatemala. We will receive a small bonus to our xenology research going forward. Okay.
Yes, what we found.
Same story.
We're in control here.
All right, we got Mexico again. Now, again, that's making our number go up, and that's going to create broader danger overall, but I like the concept of this. In practice, I tend to ignore a lot of it. All right, China has an open control point with good boost income. Let's target it to support. Thank you, Irina. Yes, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could just take over China? All right. There are a couple things that I want.
Ready for my mission.
So we should be able to not investigate counselor. Okay, I might need to rearrange the
I'm here.
priorities. Surveillance, I basically wanted to do.
Ready for orders.
Anybody else who can do
Standing by for
surveillance?
orders.
What's the op?
Standing by. Eyes up.
Okay, so
Your
they're
orders?
keeping on in
Ready for my
in
mission.
China.
Where to?
So I suppose the question here is, do I want to try anything else? I think in this case,
I will
I'm
tell
still
our
gonna
story.
keep focusing
Ready
on
to go.
Canada. And yeah, against my better judgment, let's see if we can get away with a purge in the
Removing
UK.
our enemies.
Hang on, before I do that, I want to defend our
Securing
interests
our
in the
control.
United States, because that's devastating if anything happens to us there. And we'll take a quick second. I don't think there should be any new organizations, but one of the things I like doing is just cycling through the counselors, because at that point, you know, it if I see a number, if I see something kind of go out of being grayed
On
out, then
Overwatch.
it's just faster for me to be able to stop and take a look and see if
Protecting
it's
our
something that I
interests.
want. Okay, good.
Initiating recon.
I don't want to spend too much on defending my interests, just because influence is kind of hard for me to come by. But it looks like we do have some alien resources to fight. Again, the focus should be Guatemala first.
Public sentiment is increasingly with us.
I'm going to make that a permanent assignment for now. I may change later. Okay, we kind of knew that that could happen. Supporters of the initiative have engineered a coup d'etat in Guatemala, resetting all control points and taking some control there under the regime. Some unrest has abated, and factions that supported the insurgents by contributing to unrest may gain control points under the new regime. So I am going to make an effort to try and swing that back to us. Our adversaries have conducted a crackdown. Interesting. So we may wind up losing the point.
Public opinion remains unmoved.
That was China, almost certainly. North Korea has decided to join federation with the Republic of Korea. Well, see, the initiative aren't totally bad, guys. Lost the oligarchs in Kazakhstan. That I'm not going to try and restore. Most of the boost went to Russia there anyway, so... So one of the things that's kind of nice here, right, is that we've been talking about how we're sort of building towards certain goals with the, you know, with the boost and all of that, and how we want to build towards mining. But there's really no, like, you can see that there's no shortage of things that we're doing on Earth to try and, you know, not just improve, but maintain our position in the world. So our ability to manage the affairs of so many nations is stretched thin, costing us 7.6 influence per month. Conducting management research can alleviate this. Now, the first thing that I want to do here is just see the state of play as far as research is concerned. So as we can see, I'm still dominating the research agenda. So in this case, I'm going to go a little bit more aggressive. Well, actually, we're not going to do nuclear fission in space quite yet, because there's no way that we're going to catch up. Well, okay, that's not entirely true. We do contribute quite quickly, but I think it's pretty clear here that we're doing a decent enough job of pushing our advantage. So I'm actually going to start putting some effort towards our secondary, our second train. And what I'm going to do here is we're going to change that project. I actually want to do research, management research. So control point management by 5 is not like, that's not the sort of thing that makes me click my heels, but it seems like a nice default to be building towards. And again, there's some refinement that we can do as far as this is concerned. But we're outpacing, right now we're outpacing our next greatest rival by about 50 research. And so again, I think in this case, what I want to do is reset the clock. So we've got 5/19. This will be on November 16th. I do think we're actually going to fall behind a little bit in terms of research by splitting it among 4, but I'd like to verify that. So 519 for us, then 165. Academy's got 263. Exodus is 294. And then the Academy here has got 89 versus 114. Okay.
Ready for my mission.
So,
I'm here.
Irina can assault. I'm going to focus on the asset in Guatemala, and you really only get one shot on these ones, so I'm actually going to invest pretty heavily.
Taking it to them.
Reporting in.
I don't think I have
Ready.
anybody else to be able to do an assault.
Reporting
so,
in. Ready for orders.
Let's get Ruby
Standing
to
by.
Acknowledged.
purge Guatemala.
Terminating the opposition.
Where do you need me?
And the big question here for Nancy is, well, actually, I guess we can't take the executive here because the initiative have the only spot. I suspect that this is someone who's going to try and take one of these slots. But Nancy is my scientist, and I actually have less for her to do right now, so I think probably advising the states. This is sort of something that... but it's got a 10 influence. Interesting. Okay. What's my monthly income? 81? Okay, that's not as bad as I thought. Yeah,
Offering support.
I'll do it for now.
Lending my expertise.
I'm lending my expertise to the United States of America until I am assigned a new mission. I shall be increasing the nation's research output by 10%, the effective GDP used to calculate investment points by 4%, and the performance of its armies and defensive forces by 0.0 militech value. Obviously, our plans for the UK have sort of shifted, but we want to be focusing on our backyard first.
The people will come to our side.
I forgot to check those new organizations. Okay, so we got a couple things.
Our cause is unjustified to them.
So Hibiscus Innovations gives us money, research, basically a little bit of everything. There is going to be a limit in terms of, like, so I'm now at my top, I've tapped out everyone. I'm either going to need to increase the administration, or I'm going to need to, I'm going to need to sort of reevaluate what ones I want to hang on to. So the ISIS organization, apparently we can buy this already. Bellatrix Entertainment. I mean, I like this for the bonuses and all of that it gives. That might be one that I'm willing to spike. Sea Dragon. It's a little harder to justify. I don't know. I think I'm gonna sit on the organizations for a bit. Of course, another answer, of course, is was developed Corvid. Alien abductions reported. We are receiving reports of possible alien abductions in the Kunming region of China. Further notifications like this will only appear in the notification queue on the left-hand side of the screen. I'll also take a quick second here to see if there's any interesting. So Project Exodus has launched a probe to Mars. We probably want to do that ourselves.
Target secure.
Excellent. Our assault on the alien life forms in Guatemala City region has been a complete success. We believe that we've wiped out the invasive flora and fauna. That was a critical success. Military escalation. Military advances in Venezuela have increased tensions with the United States of America. The United States of America may mount a series of airstrikes against the forces of Venezuela, degrading their military tech level. So we can take no action, and they'll increase their military tech. Okay. Venezuela is not owned by anyone yet. However, it is potentially in danger of falling to the servants. I think I'm going to say take no action because I would prefer a strong. I prefer a strong Earth.
Remains in power.
Failed to purge. Okay, that's fine. I think I'll repeat that mission. We've learned that Project Exodus has failed a purge mission that was targeting Mexico, so now we know the allegiance of that counselor. South Korea, under the control of the Initiative and the United Kingdom, have formed an alliance. They will defend each other if attacked and have the option to join each other's wars of aggression. The two nations will be able to forge closer ties after the 29th of February, 2024. Commander, we have... Oh, yes, actually, so let's do the Mars probe. So, always sad to give up some boost, but... moving right along, I also want to take a look at the state of play for research. So, on December the 1st... So we are at 609, 255, so easily outpacing our rivals. The Academy is at 321, Exodus is at 355. And then on the other side, we've got Academy at 146, Exodus at 175. And of course, what matters here is not so much the absolute values as the rate of change. So I'm not gonna. I'll work out the daily amount too, but I'll take my calculator out because I'm definitely not quite in shape for. Okay, sorry. So we're at 321. Subtract 263. It's not the hardest math in the world, but Academy went up by 58. Exodus at 355 from 294 went up by 61. And then in the other site we've got 146 from 89. So that's 57. So they're putting about the same amount into each field. So we've got 175, previously 114, so that's 61. So then the big question for us is, how much are we putting in per period? So from 609 to 519. And in this case, we're absolutely dominating them at 90. Which implies that once we pass nuclear fission in space, we might actually be able to take that fifth slot and still be able to control the worldwide research agenda, which is a huge benefit for us. So just to give you an idea about why this is an important priority for me here, the key behind this is that I've actually got two tracks in terms of objectives that I'm trying to achieve. Number one is the industrialization of space, basically the title for the stream. Now, we know that we need to meet a certain number of conditions in order to be able to do that, or at least for it to be, an intelligent move to do that. But the second one is that I am running into problems with my control points. And sure, I can keep investing in management research, but even then, like, those gains are quite slow compared to some of the other things that I'm trying to do. And so with that in mind, the other thing that I want to keep in mind is to head on this tech tree. And one of the ways that I can try and free up my command points is to follow the technology tree to a point where we can start unifying some of the different nations under my control. This is always a tricky one for me to find in the map, but But I think it is worth describing just in terms of what the overall plan is going to be. So. All right, so we would need to start with arrival international relations. Then we do great nations. From great nations, we can then consider United North America. Now, the really important thing here is that this grants the United States of America claims on Vancouver, Whitehorse, Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, and Nuuk. So this actually means that my next expansion point would be Canada, which I don't currently control. Following that, then there is Greater United North America. And in that case, Monterrey, Mexico City, Santo Domingo, Havana, Georgetown, Williamstead, Guatemala City, Belize. I'm terrible with pronunciation. Tegucigalpa. You know who would help me out here? Brian on the Rocks is Milady. Yesy. And Panama City. And I don't think that leads to any further tech. Now again, something that costs 35,000, that is that's a very, very long kind of road past, arrival international relations, which is 5,000. So I should not be expecting I shouldn't be expecting some big benefits from this path for a while. In fact, one thing I might consider would be something like the Central American Confederation as a start, maybe just to be able to consolidate whatever remaining Central American nations that I have, right? Those are a couple of others that I could consider. By the way, one thing that I find fascinating here is End of America is considerably easier to do. I mean, all of the destruction is considerably easier to do than the unification. And I think this is probably what the game is sort of talking about when it says that it's easier to play as the servants than it is to play as the people. It's easier to like be the fifth column than it is to resist. But anyway, let's get back to the task at hand. So yeah, we're still trying to unseat the initiative. We're gonna focus on those alien assets again. This is a considerably more difficult mission. I think it's still worth it to throw some... Hang on, there was the codex. So investigate alien induction. Okay, conduct surveil missions in regions near any alien crash sites. If abductions are detections, send a counselor. Okay, so we don't need to assault, we can investigate. So yes, that I definitely want
on the way to the target site.
So I've been waiting for the abductions to see specifically what's been happening. Now, for salvaging alien technology... Okay, so I suppose the destroy alien asset missions haven't quite been enough for there. And yes, we will found a station, but we won't found it until we've completed... until we've sort of completed the missions or the tech that we need to build a meaningful mine. Now, I thought that it sort of said until I was given another mission. This one I am a little confused by based on what the game said. So it said until I'm given another mission, I'm going to keep augmenting the nation's resources. So I'm sort of wondering if I don't do anything with Nancy. I am a little curious if this means that we get the bonuses or if I have to pay the 10 influence each time. And let's see if there's maybe something that the codex can tell us to clarify that. And it's one of these things where there's like a little bit of a like you see there's the one understanding about how the game works, and then there's the particular phrasing in a tooltip which maybe isn't intended to be sort of taken with too seriously, but it's just one of these ones where it's nice to try and gain a greater picture. And again, for me, it's always a matter of you make a prediction based on the information that you have. If it doesn't turn out, then you learn better. And this is one of the ways that I tend to try to learn games. So here's the mission list. So for starters, we will take a look at Advise. So provides expertise to a nation or HAB. The Counselor's Science, Command, and Administration attributes will improve the target's research output, combat capabilities, and financial performance. Adding additional counselors provides diminishing benefits. Okay, so that doesn't say anything on its own. I'm gonna... Sorry, just reviewing the short list here. North Korea and Canada are now allies. This is one of the... I haven't been highlighting this as much on this particular playthrough. Sorry, just 1 second. So what was I going to say? Okay, one way or the other. I do want to take a quick second here and take a look at the wiki. And the thing I'm specifically looking at is the phrasing that it originally said about not being assigned another mission. So again, I'm not under any illusions as to whether or not Nancy Ford is currently on a mission. However, the specific phrasing from the event before seemed to suggest that it was the sending her on another mission that would end it. The reason why I want to try and get an answer to this, though, is that if I don't send Nancy off on missions, she's not going to get experience. And so I don't mind spending the extra influence in order to be able to get the bonus to, GDP and science. I think that's a worthwhile investment, particularly because I'm going to be moving on. I'm going to be moving on to, trying to dominate the world research agenda. I don't mind saying I'm not willing to spend the influence because I think there are better things that I can be doing with the money right now. I also think that's a legitimate choice. The one thing that I don't want to do is put too much weight on a particular thing that the game told me that maybe it didn't intend for me to put that much emphasis on, and result in a situation where I'm not getting the benefit of the research, but simultaneously I'm also not improving my counselor by taking more active measures. So what I'm trying to do here is try and get a more definitive answer from the game in terms of what it thinks should be done. So just taking another look here in terms of missions. My prior is that it should be you should probably need to do the advise each turn. But it would be better to again, it would be better to see if there's a specific so yeah, again, on the wiki here, it said, oh, sorry, I didn't bring it up. So provide expertise to a nation or HAB. The counselor's science, command, and administration attributes will improve the target's research output, combat capabilities, and financial performance. Additional advising counselors provide diminishing benefits. Now, these are all put under the uncontested missions category. Turns out I don't want to look too far on this, but when it says ending missions, I'm like, oh man, there's even more that's coming up for us. So what I'm going to try and do here is that in this situation, I fall back on my prior, right? Which is to say, I don't think that I get the permanent bonus from this ability. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do advise again, but I'm going to read a little bit more closely to see specifically what the reading was, to see specifically where I might have been misled as far as the as far as potential outcomes would be. So again, provide expertise to a nation or HAB. The counselor's science, command, administration attributes will improve the target's research output, combat capabilities, and financial performance. Additional advising counselors provide diminishing benefits.
Offering assistance.
So one of the reasons why this is important is that because we're also focusing on investigating alien activities, I might have been able to use Irina for something else instead of investigating the alien abductions. And that's one of the reasons why I want to have a clearer idea in terms of what my different counselors can do, because it's certainly the case that there's lots of other things I could be doing right now. I do want to reclaim Guatemala. I do want to try and claim the PMO in the... Is it the PMO in the UK? I know it is in the in Canada. And, I'd also like to maybe expand out to Ireland if I can. There's a number of different things that I can be doing with my counselors, and it's good to be able to say, all right, I know I'm doing X or Y, because I think, this one is a higher priority than this other one. But like I said, we've made our choices, we've locked in. Let's see how the turn goes. I'm also going to take a second here to zoom out. I'm curious to see if we can see any mining operations on these. I'm assuming it's going to label it when other people have established a presence, but... Oh, that's a lot of sites. Okay, so it's pretty clear I'm not going to be ruling Mars. But if I can get the good spots first, that's still a win.
Offering counsel.
Okay, I am lending my expertise to the United States of America. Until I am assigned a new mission, I shall be increasing the nation's research output by 10%, the effective GDP used to calculate investment points by 4%, and the performance of its armies and defense forces by 0.00 militech value. Hello, TM Tony. How you doing? How far did you get on my previous run? Well, this is still the resistance run. So I did have some difficulty just in terms of balancing work and all of that stuff. So this is actually the same tutorial run from before. So I did it once. There was the one before launch. There's the one post-launch, which has done surprisingly. So this is the one that's sort of repairing. The previous one was the one that was repairing from some of the prior mistakes, and we wound up getting the United States and rather unexpectedly. And we're continuing on from there. So I am eventually going to be working towards sort of a space presence. But one thing I've been just trying to work out here specifically is the advise mission. So like what I'm getting here is that I probably wasted 10 influence for no real reason. And maybe one thing I will do to take a quick look. Oop, what's happening here? A probe controlled by the Resistance was launched towards Mars. That's fine. Although for some reason I thought we had done that before. Well, I mean, it's not that great. I, I have no reason to believe that. I have no reason to believe that the. That leaving Nancy Ford on her own will do anything but improve the economy, right? So what I'm going to try and do here is see if there's maybe a breakdown in terms of how these different. Yeah, so this is really great to see here, right? So I can now mouse over monthly research, and it says faction counselor advisors are increasing this value by 10%. And so what I can do now is that I can just leave Nancy in place, like not actually do that, not do that mission. And if we lose that notice, well, there's a really clear, that gives me a really clear signal in terms of how that works. And then I'll say, okay, I'm going to keep reassigning Nancy. And if I don't see that notification, right, or like if that still stays, well, then in that case, I don't need to be spending the influence. I can worry about some other priorities. And this is sort of back to that kind of call and response that I was talking about in terms of gaining understanding of the game. For me, I've never been that bothered by like playing poorly or or quote unquote getting it wrong. Just so long as I have a clear mental model in my head about why the things I'm seeing are happening, basically. Because the thing is that if you make it kind of comes back to that thing I said about the wiki. I can probably bring that up, actually. The types of things that I can work well with are beginner's guide. I don't mean to harp on this particular point, but like this I think is a reasonable I think this is a reasonable contrast in terms of the two types of advice that work well for me and don't work well for me in like manuals or whatever. So when it says here mission controls are best established in smaller countries that you control but plan to unify into a larger country later. And there's no explanation as to why that might be. Like I said earlier, I can sort of sketch out, I said a different word, but like I can sort of sketch out like if I take this statement as true, right? Especially if any of you have ever done like an analysis class or actually maybe even some like linear algebra class. Anyway, so proofs in philosophy, discrete math and computer science, analysis in mathematics. There's a few different ones where you'll like learn proofs, and in some cases, you assume the premise is correct because, anything sort of follows from a false premise and all of that. And so in this case here, it's like, sure, I can assume that this is true, and I can create any sort of song and dance to try and explain why this works. But the advice thing is an issue that's unclear to you as well after playing 93 hours. Yeah. So this is not a bad example, right? Like this isn't going to be like a perfect mapping, but another one that I actually think is true is that I think there's a lot of confusion as to how unification works. I've definitely seen people who explain unification to me more or less in the terms that I would describe unification. And they say, and I'm trying to do it with this nation. And I'm like, yep, okay, that makes sense. I think you should be able to unify that nation. And then sure enough, like they're not able to unify the nation. And I'm like, oh, wow, that is really surprising because you seem to fit every single requirement that you would need for that kind of unification. And maybe it's a bug, or maybe it's just a question in terms of how things are communicated. But like that's, I think, another good example of where you have sort of an expected behavior and then there is what actually happens inside the game. So whenever I encounter something like this, and this is a beginner's guide. So like I said, I don't want to like come down like a ton of bricks on someone for writing this, because this could actually be good advice. But this tells me absolutely nothing about why it is useful to have mission controls inside of smaller countries. And like I said, it might be that because of the way that the division of resources works, that in the end, the money that you put towards establishing mission controls in smaller countries go further than inside of large nations. So, and again, it just could be that there's some sort of, like curve past a certain point, you have like a minimum level to be able to establish a space program, and that gets you a mission control point. But like once you're in really, really advanced stuff that you're just don't get as many mission control points or whatever, there could be any number of ways that that's modeled inside the game. But that particular sentence doesn't tell us anything about why you go down that particular path. Now we can contrast this with the recommendation here about, the actual industrialization of space. The main requirement is having enough boost as well as some mission control. A good starting point is about 40 to 60 boost and having 2 to 4 mission control available. One mine will require 2 mission control. So the thing is that this is pretty clearly a heuristic. It's to say this is something that, I think is useful in terms of being able to accomplish the things that you want. I think it's fairly clear that you may have a different opinion in terms of these numbers, but we're going to anchor the conversation around this particular set of numbers because it's helpful to shoot towards a target as opposed to just sort of be told, I've got 1 boost. Is that a lot? Because like for ops, 1 can actually be quite a bit depending on what your starting conditions are. For money, 1 is not a lot. And so the scales of the different variables inside of this game can actually be quite different. Even between boost and mission control, the difference is quite stark. But what's particularly helpful here is that it adds in the parenthetical, 1 mine will require 2 MC. So why do you need 2 to 4 mission control? Well, basically because it's fairly obvious that you want at least enough to cover the asset that you're going to be putting in space. Well, I guess not in space because it's going to be on it's going to be on the moon or Mars. But you can see, right? Like you want to at least cover what's going to be required to run this thing. But, in this case here, instead of it just being sort of a commandment without any real reasoning behind it, this one sort of has embedded in the sentence an explanation in terms of saying that, you want to have, enough to control the asset that you're putting on, or maybe you want a bit of overhead so you can build a second one, or you have some flexibility. And those are the kinds of points that I like, because in the end, those are the ones that I can build off of. And in the end, I can decide, I don't actually think that, I don't think that advice is as important. I think you can actually run, a deficit on, X, Y, and Z topic and be fine, but in the end, those are decisions that you make based on your understanding after experience. So yeah, in this case here, right, so for the advised mission, there was some confusion that was created from the completion window. So I said, okay, now that I know I'm not certain. Okay, so I basically say, and I'm sorry, like for most people this is obvious, but I like being able to explain the thought process. I say, so number 1, I've established that I'm confused about this, right? Sometimes just knowing you don't know something is actually quite a bit of progress, particularly in complicated games. So then we say, it's like, okay, well, let's, I've got my assumption about what the state of the world is right now. What I'm going to do for the next step is I'm going to run with a version of the world that I sort of understand. And we're going to see what the effect of that is going to be. So in this case here, I said it's probably the case that if I don't move this, counselor, I'm going to be fine. But I don't learn anything if I do, I don't learn anything if I do that, right? It may just turn out that I waste them for a few turns. So I'm going to do this mission again, and we're going to get the exact wording now that I know what to look for. So now that we've done that, we've said, okay, so yes, what we thought before is in fact stated in this pop-up, that they're going to continue to lend expertise until they're assigned a new mission. And armed with that knowledge, we then says okay, is there something that the game tells me otherwise, to sort of indicate whether or not this advantage is actually in effect? And we do see that under monthly research, it says faction counselors are increasing the value by 10%. So what this means now is that I can leave Nancy Ford untouched, and we'll see whether or not there is an improvement that's made after the next set of council assignments. And if that if that notification goes away, it means that the pop-up is misleading. And if, on the other hand, after the next round of assignments, the boost is still there, we know that we don't need to commit the 10 influence each time. Although I suspect it will mean that probably this counselor is not getting the same kind of experience. We'll look into that a little bit later. But this is, a nice little microcosm of the way that for some of the most complicated games that I've learned, it usually winds up being a process like this. Sometimes you need to reload. Sometimes there are some other things that you need to do. But in the end, just being able to try and establish some sort of hypothesis and then being able to run a test on it. This is going to sound like you're in your stats classes or econometrics classes or something like that again. But being able to do that, I think, is very helpful. And particularly when games are in early access or they don't have a manual or anything along those lines, or maybe they do have a manual, but the manual was written by someone who didn't think that that would be a point of confusion. These are all ways of being able to sort of help improve your own understanding of a game, and as a result, to be able to make some better decisions moving in. Yeah, well, I mean, again, this is the reason why we're going to do the test, right?
In 1954, the Americans built the first nuclear-powered submarine and changed the course of naval warfare. Now, it is upon us to become the creators of the first nuclear-powered spaceship. It is upon us to define warfare in space. Commander Fiona Ayawade comments to media at Churchill Shipyards.
Okay, so this is another one of these techs that are going to enable mining in space. Since we have discovered nuclear fission in 1938, we have used this knowledge both to give and to take, to build power plants and weapons of mass destruction alike. With every passing decade, our understanding of the forces that rule the universe grew, and we were able to refine this process further. However, until now, reactors needed the pull of gravity in order to contain the chain reaction and to keep the water flowing. Without that flow, nothing happens. For fission heats water, water becomes steam, and steam turns turbines, and turbines generate energy. Now, combining our new concepts for deep space propulsion with our decades of experience in nuclear fission, we are able to stabilize the first nuclear reaction in space. With our new reactor designs, we no longer need gravity to collect the energy released by splitting atoms. Our new containment systems ensure a safe, sustained chain reaction in zero-G. Thanks to this achievement, our fission-powered spacecraft can now reach the darkest and furthest corners of our solar system. Nuclear reactors will power ships, weapons, and habitats, enabling us to harness countless resources far beyond our homeworld's atmosphere and to meet the aliens in the vast openness of space rather than bound to our own soil. Furthermore, these technologies will help us build the next generation of solid fission systems and explore the even greater energy potential of nuclear fission in space. Fusion in space, not fission. Okay, I see that everything that I had to say about figuring things out and trying things for yourselves were completely wasted. I just shouldn't have taken that time talking about it. But guys, I am gonna do it my way. And I am going to gain the certainty of that. And all I can say is this is how I play games, okay? I am not going to be persuaded one way or another that coming up with a definitive answer is a bad thing. And I'm just going to do that. So I think this is, if this is not something that you're into, that's just that's going to be a point of disagreement. I'm sorry, but I gotta be as blunt as I can about that, because I'm feeling like everything that I said is just completely, I might have well have been talking into a coffee cup with the mic muted. Increases the global nuclear fission tech level by 1, buffering the world against energy crises. The following technologies may now be researched: solid core fission systems, and the following projects may unlock for us to research in the future. I saw your message to create. Yes, I agree. Hello, the Sandman is here. I do say sorry quite a bit, but I guess the biggest thing for me is that I have never pretended to be the best at the games that I play. I don't think I've ever really had a claim to being a skill-based streamer. Generally, people tend to like, hearing my voice over the game. Some people find it helpful for learning the game. I certainly like learning games. And I've often found that when people want to sort of instruct on the right way to do things, quote unquote, that takes away from the added value that I can give inside of games. And I really tried my best to try and explain why I think this particular approach is a good one, but I'm realizing that was not that was not taken up. But yeah, I could also just be a member of the servants to try and up the loss rate for the resistance. Anyways, thank you very much for stopping by. Okay, so we're going to go to the science screen, and again, we're going to record a little bit of data because I'm at the point here. Now, if I'm going to have to sacrifice a research slot, it's actually going to be the management research one, as much as I hate to do that. But what I'm going to try and do here is see if I can get away with... I want to see if I can get away with running 5 tracks and dominating the competition. So on December 2nd... It's important to distinguish this from December 1st, because December 1st we were contributing about 6 per day. So, and generally what I'm doing here is I'm only looking at the Academy and the Exodus project, because they're really the contenders. And one of the reasons why I'm being quite stubborn in terms of recording the specifics on a given date is that it is entirely possible for me to have a big advantage, like something like Mission to the Asteroids, to let that be an illusion that I'm actually just like kicking ass as far as the as far as my advantage in terms of the overall research is concerned, only to sort of turn around and see that only to kind of turn around and say it's like, oh, actually, it turns out that I've been eating up this early burst of research that I had, and it turns out that the Academy has been eating my lunch for the last 2 months. So they're at 329 in the first category. Exodus is in 366. There is one other calculation I'm going to do, but I still think this is useful to put down. And obviously, over the long run, this is going to turn out to be something of an average. Like, if I go back to that first, October 25th measurement, that's going to be an average because my ability to create research as well as the enemy will change over time. But even then, being able to get an understanding of how these numbers are changed. Again, a ballpark is still helpful to work with. Sometimes it's nice to have a boundary just to kick against. The other thing that I wanted to do was we should have enough time now. So if I look from November 16th to December 1st, we could see that there was sort of 57 from the Academy and 61 from Exodus. And in fact, maybe we'll just worry about the 61 from Exodus. So, sorry, let me just take a quick second here, because I think everything's going to be broken down into days. And there's 30 days in November, so that would be 14 or 15. Let's do 14 because that's the more pessimistic case. So this implies 4.30. Wow. Okay, so this really is at a razor's edge. So based on what we observed from November 16th to December 1st, in terms of the global research agenda, it looks like the Exodus project was, again, sort of based on the numbers that we saw, contributing I'll say 4.36. Ah, interesting. So that actually suggests that this one is a little too short. Here's what we're going to do. Nah, I think pushing it up to 5 should be sufficient. So we are sort of starving our internal research a little bit, but I think this gives me a pretty. I think the dominant position is pretty clear here. I set the global research agenda, and I can tinker around the edges. We'll still record the data in terms of where things are going, but I don't know, seeing that one number there, even though Project Exodus is kind of in line with some of my priorities here, I don't think I want to let them kind of creep in on the edge, especially because, like I said, we are going to be going down 2 different research paths, and so it would be nice to have a few options. All right, moving right along. Should also probably be putting some experience points in Argentina's initiated spaceflight. Large typhoon has stuck the Davao region in the Philippines.
Public opinion is moving in our direction.
We hold no sway in their minds.
Definitely doing well in terms of our reputation in Canada. Of course, this is all laying the foundations for hello, alien abductions reported. We're receiving. Okay, that's expanded.
Recon complete.
I have learned some useful information from my investigation of the alien activity in China. We will receive a small bonus to our xenology research going forward. All right. So I'm curious why they made me do that for the objectives. Here we go. Objective complete. We have completed the Investigate Alien Abductions objective. Our counselor has investigated some of these reported abductions, interviewing residents and local authorities. The local government continues to deny that anything has happened, and in fact has done its best to actively hinder us. Though we have no proof yet, we suspect that other organizations are pulling strings to block our investigations. Despite the obstacles, our counselor has confirmed that a small but statistically significant number of people and animals have gone missing in the area since the alien crash landing. This is disturbing news. Many among our faction had clung to the hope that despite their secrecy, the intentions of the aliens towards our species might be benevolent or at least neutral. These apparent abductions leave little chance of that, but what is their purpose? How are you doing, Quint? So, Ulgrins, I don't know if you know this, but Pavonis Interactive, the developers behind this game, are responsible for the Long War mod and then Long War 2. And then there was also, I know that they were brought on to do some additional content for XCOM 2, but I don't recall exactly what they, had contributed. You've tried to have a more proper introduction, but your wit failed. Well, I mean, in fairness, how many times have I done the hello Quint 728th of your name? I'm not exactly the most original in my introduction. You did know that. So it should be an addiction to the game to go down to the tactical level and rescue a cat. Oh, there should be addition, not addiction. By the way, there was something I wound up going on another tangent before, but there was actually one thing I wanted to talk about that I'm appreciating more about this. And for those of you who've been watching me do Terra Invicta for a while, I realize that this is going to be a little kind of tedious because you've heard me talk about it before, but I still think it's worth saying. I am continuing to appreciate how much, how good this is as a science fiction game. And this is, we'll need a little bit of unpacking. I'm just going to hit continue to see. I'll go through the, maybe what I can do is I can go through the screens and then we'll put the speed down so that there's at least motion on the screen, which I think people tend to like. Research alien methods. All evidence suggests that the aliens are abducting human subjects, but why? What are they trying? Are they trying to communicate, studying us, hunting us, or do they have some other purpose, something so truly alien that it is wholly beyond our understanding? We have many questions and few answers. For now, all we have to go on is the abductions themselves. Our analysts have proposed a more detailed study of the abduction data in the hope of discovering some patterns or avenues of research. Research the Alien Methods Project when it becomes available. Okay, so like I said, we'll roll that back a bit. So it seems like an incredibly obvious statement to say that this is a good science fiction game, right? Because it is a good game that has an alien invasion as its premise. And so, of course, it's a good science fiction game. But I want to try and highlight a little bit more what I mean by that, particularly because that is a really cool effect, which I totally didn't pay attention to the last time. So one thing I will also say for this game, like some of the stuff that I see on the world and like all of the stuff that's changing and happening on it, and I think it's partly because of the fact that the developers have clearly been really keeping on top of world events and making adjustments to the world map as the world changes. But there have been more than a few times where I've played this game and have said, man, could you imagine seeing this in the real world? Like, there have definitely been a few points where I'm like, oh man, like, it's really exciting, but it's also like really unnerving, like, to see something like this. Might also be because I'm going on a flight soon. So, but yeah, anyways. So, one of the reasons why I also want to say this is because I'm going to talk about a different game, and it's because it's October, and I know people like doing horror games for October, so if you are a streamer, hopefully I will sway you on this. But I think a number of you have played, and sadly we lost our opportunity to take the executive. Does it say... No, it just says executive. We have Parliament. They have the mass media and the corporations. So Rupert Murdoch is a member of the initiative. Who would have known? But anyways, so especially for people who are maybe not gamers, one of the games I really like recommending to them is Soma. Because Soma is possibly one of the best science fiction stories I've seen in a game, like, just flat out. And it starts on the right tone, like you've got a quote by Philip K. Dick inside of it. It's about something. It takes you to really interesting places. It is absolutely, in my opinion, a story worth paying attention to and spending some time with. And if you have not played Soma, I highly recommend it. I do not think that game got nearly enough respect when it first came out, and it feels like people are beginning to appreciate how good that game was after the fact. But if you haven't, it is definitely one that I would recommend checking out. And I've always been a little cautious when it comes to these kinds of labels. You also recommend Soma as one of the games that has stuck with you all this time. Yeah, I mean, it's number one, I think it's a very good experience. Like, that on its own should be should be enough, I think. But as far as like content is concerned, as far as like a story to be experienced, I really do think you could do worse than as a game, it's fun to play. As a story, it is definitely something that sticks with you, and I think it is one that more people should experience. And I'm reluctant to spend a lot of time talking about particular labels because they are helpful to a certain degree, and then they sort of become the kind of the ladder that you kick away after you climb, climb up. I know I'm setting up like a massive scaffolding for what should be a simple point, but the example I will give you is this. Like, if you like science fiction, chances are you've gone to some kind of a bookstore and you've seen that there is like the literature section. Like, first of all, there's like the fiction section of the store, and then there's like literature, and then there's like mysteries and romance, and then science fiction and fantasy. And like science fiction and fantasy sometimes gets broken out into its own sections, and sometimes it's just one big combination, which is the the section for people who have like elf/Spock ears in their pocket. I don't think, as far as finding the stuff that you want, I actually don't think that's necessarily a bad way of dividing things, right? Like, if you want to get Game of Thrones, or A Song of Ice and Fire, I suppose would be the appropriate title, or Foundation or something like that, chances are you're probably not going to be wanting to walk through, like something by Barbara Kingsolver or something like that. With no disrespect to, to mainstream literary authors. But chances are, though, right, if you're looking for, knights in armor or dragons or something like that, you're probably not really going to care that much for, the Cider House Rules or something. Or was it the Cider House Rules? Sorry, there was a specific book I had in mind, and I think I actually got the title wrong. Anyways. I think you get what I'm talking about. But the really tough one is that there are those works which have sort of transcended the disreputable, pulpy science fiction label and are considered literature. So, for instance, would you consider The Handmaid's Tale to be science fiction? Would you consider it to be literature? What about 1984? Science fiction, literature? And I mean, to complicate it even further, Animal Farm is called a fairy story at the start. Now, I'm not going to say Animal Farm is science fiction, but the labels that even the authors attach to them are not necessarily the ones that you would see assigned inside of a bookstore. And one of the really big challenges sometimes is that the only distinction between I guess the entirety of the Twilight Zone would probably go in the television section if we were still to buy physical copies of film and television. So there's an out there. But I get what you're saying. Like, sometimes the distinction between science fiction and literature is just, do the people at the dinner party sort of raise an eyebrow when you mention it? So, like, Philip K. Dick is never going to be in the literature section. Maybe Man in the High Castle, which is a brilliant book, and I highly recommend it. I still have not seen that much of the TV series, but I love that book. May actually be the first novel by Philip K. It was either that or A Scanner Darkly. But in any case, like, Philip K. Dick is an excellent writer, in my opinion. But he's never going to be in the literature section. J.G. Ballard, I mean, some of his stuff definitely doesn't fall under science fiction or speculative fiction. So that might make it a little bit easier. But you can see how these conversations get complicated. And, coming up with these labels can sometimes be very arbitrary. And all of that was me setting up the idea of talking about hard and soft science fiction. So sometimes what people will say would be that hard science fiction is something that is focused on sort of scientific accuracy. So I think, I have not read it, but I think Andy Weir's The Martian is supposed to be a modern example of hard science fiction that is kind of concerned about some of the specific details of the events sort of depicted inside of the story, whereas some of the, like, I suspect probably Philip K. Dick would probably be closer to soft science fiction, which is that these can be a vehicle for some fairly incredible technologies and ideas that come up as a result of them, but it's not really the fact that these are, like, that this is some kind of plausible technology, that a story is being told in a fantastic setting without maybe concerning itself too much with the details about how that world works. But I have heard another definition of soft science fiction, which is that it does actually concern itself with certain, with certain sciences and certain details, but that it is more attached to the soft sciences. And so in this case, you would see sort of, things like economics, sociology. And I mean, again, like, let's be clear that this is actually something that has resulted in a lot of very interesting science fiction. I know a couple of people who actually studied economics specifically because of Foundation, because they thought that was the closest that they would ever get to psychohistory, which I think is really cool, right? But that's not the reason I did. But I think that's actually really neat that that people were inspired by that, and it did actually ultimately decide where they wanted to try and gain a greater understanding of the world. And so the reason why I wanted to highlight this is that when you take a look at the descriptions of the technologies, and like even just like the size of the tech tree, or the fact that you have like your different boost levels, and that there are windows where it is, it's better to try and and launch something onto Mars, or that, all of that's inside the game. And you would kind of consider in this case, okay, well, this is a hard science fiction game because it's, it does actually concern itself with the details of, kind of conveying, objects from Earth into space in order to be able to do it. I mean, the mere fact that the alien invasion, that they've sort of set up a shipyard, on a belt dwarf planet. Get closer, damn you. Right, eventually we're going to have to take out this space station, which is only getting stronger. This thing was still under construction while when we first looked at it. Part of this is actually, I guess, if anything, a race to industrialize the solar system. That, you don't have an alien invasion in the form of an entire armada that is arriving, but instead their strategy is to enter into a system and then be able to build up its invasion force to move in. At least so that seems to be what's happening. Like, in that case, that's trying to address, the question of, is like, how on earth did these things even get here in the first place? So again, in that case, you'd say, yeah, there's definitely a focus in terms of sort of the, you kind of say it's a hard science fiction style game. And yet the thing that interests me the most of the game is actually a lot of the, the political simulation, which again, you would sort of associate with soft sciences. I've heard a fun, this is kind of a little elitist to say, but I still think it's a fun thing to say. I've heard from a couple of academics who say that basically if you have to put science in the title, you're not doing science. So like cognitive science or political science, they know they're not doing science, and so they have to put science in the title, and they say, but we economists, we don't say economic science, and so we're doing real science. And I'm like, I happen to know a couple of physicists who really disagree with that point of view, but on the other hand, the person saying that is a very, 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 very intelligent guy. So I wasn't going to be the one to raise my hand and say, well, actually. And like, just to be clear from my own point of view, I've definitely, like, when I had to write papers, especially in school, I loved reading poli-sci stuff where I was like, oh, that's a really interesting idea. And like the ones I loved the most was where I was like, oh, that's a really interesting idea. And I totally think they did not, I do not think they delivered on the promise of this paper. Like, it was a really cool abstract, and it totally didn't deliver on the, on the promise of this original idea. And so, I just kind of go in and do it the way I wanted to see it. And I wound up, some of my better assignments I actually sort of feel came out of that. So, and I sort of feel that's how it should work, right? Because like, it's not like I'm going to sit down and say, political scientists, sociologists, they don't know anything. You want to read the literature, and where you disagree with it, you try and build and improve on it. Like, because, likewise, I'm sure there's a ton of economics literature, which is just nonsense. And then people look at that and say, but there's a really cool idea here. Let's work on that and improve it. But anyways, with that in mind, right, like the reason why I say this is a really good science fiction game is not just because there's all of these cool interlocking systems and all of that, although again, that is a really big and neat feature of this game, but all of this still wraps up in the story of the alien invasion, right? One that's gone all the way back to at least War of the Worlds, if not earlier. Because I know there's like a couple of Roman, what was it? That one wasn't Juvenile, was it? God, it was like a true story, I think it was called. I'll see if I can find the proper title for it. Because I know we're getting close to the end of the time, and I know I'm not going to be able to industrialize space by the end of it, but... Wait, it wasn't Juvenile. It would have been Lucian, I think. Yep, Lucian. And it was Greek. So a true story, also translated as true history, is a long novella or short novel written in the 2nd century AD by the Greek author Lucian of Samosata. The novel is a satire of outlandish tales that have been reported in ancient sources, particularly those that presented fantastic or mythical events as if they were true. It is Lucian's best-known work. It is one of the earliest known works of fiction to include travel to outer space, alien life forms, and interplanetary warfare. It has been described as the first known text that could be called science fiction. However, it does not fit into typical literary genres. Its multi-layered plot and its characters have been interpreted as belonging to science fiction, fantasy, satire, or parody, and have been the subject of scholarly debate. For what it's worth, I tend to fall on Frankenstein as the first science fiction story, but there was actually, I think it was Carl Sagan made a pretty convincing argument for Kepler telling the first story, because I think there's a story that he had written, and I really wish I understood. God, I can never remember. I think it started with an S. Somnium, I think. And I think that one has I think that has a description in terms of what Earth looks like from the moon. Hello, the Eyes of Sin. But in any case, I bring up a true story just because, again, in this case it's Earth invading somewhere else, but like this is definitely one of the early plots and one of the best known ones, right? In fact, Alsomnium, I'm not sure what you're referring to. If you're referring to Kepler, because I know you like Carl Sagan quite a bit. In fact, for those of you who don't know them, okay, probably a different story then. For those of you who do not know the Eyes of Sin, they are a talented emote artist. Actually, so is Takri, by the way. I just don't have a link for Takri's stuff. But the Eyes of Sin is the person responsible for the emotes in my channel. Sorry to deny you the really good soundtrack here, but we've got some here. There's actually another work that I commissioned from Eyes of Sin, which you will be seeing in a forthcoming publication. Or maybe you won't, because maybe you don't want to read my articles. But it does happen to be about another science fiction story that I was about to talk about. But in any case, I actually had a wonderful opportunity to have a chat with them yesterday, I think it was. And in any case, somebody who I get a chance to share a bunch of different interests. I think this is one of the things that's most delightful in terms of talking with Eyes of Sin, is there always winds up being another set of interests that they have that I never knew that they were interested in before, and then I just get to learn about new things. So, for instance, there's a shocking amount about botany. Also, was the first person I talked to about garum, who wasn't a classical scholar. Oh, wonderful! Good work, Eyes of Sin. But yes. Eyes of Sin is an emote artist available to hire. Also, and actually, if you don't mind, because I do need to focus back on the game. I've been sort of ranting for a bit. Eyes of Sin, you can feel free to drop your links. And actually, I can open that up to everyone. If you do have a link for where you're doing your work or otherwise selling something, feel free to to put that in the chat. If you're a broadcaster, that applies as well. But in any case, the reason why I wanted to talk about this is that, I've been thinking about this in particular because I was talking with another streamer friend of mine, Johnny Big Time, about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, and what a really, first of all, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a great idea for a story, but Volume 2 is an even better idea on top of that. So for those of you that don't know about the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, it's sort of these Victorian-era characters who are put together in this super group to sort of defend the interests of the British Empire. So you have Mina Harker from Dracula, and you have Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, and the Invisible Man, and Captain Nemo from Jules Verne, 20,000 Years Under the Sea. Sorry, Leagues Under the Sea, not years. I feel like Alan Quatermain from King Solomon's Mines. Basically a bunch of literary characters from roughly around that time, kind of going on adventures and doing things. And then the second volume starts with the invasion from H.G. Wells' War in the World and the League fighting back that invasion. That is an idea that as soon as you hear about that, you have to see how that turns out, right? I cannot hear that pitch without wanting to know more about what's going on. And, you can look at other ones, you can even go from the high to the low in terms of these kinds of stories. So one thing I really love about Independence Day, that old science fiction movie, is that it is a love letter to science fiction. And it's so obvious, right? There's the alien invasion part. It clearly has the reference to, War in the Worlds that way. But how do they beat the aliens? It's a virus, right? It's such a clever twist on that old convention. But man, they deliver, right? That is a if you want high art, definitely look elsewhere. But let's face it, that is a pretty memorable film, I think. And it's one that I'm happy to have experienced, let's say. And so, to bring it back to the main point, the thing that continues to impress me about Terra Invicta, again, is that it does seem to be following in that tradition of science fiction. It doesn't have to be Soma, where you are seeing things through the point of view of the, of the main character, right? I've never taken the perspective of Iowata, except maybe as the, just kind of looking at the geoscape and seeing what's going on in the world. But all of these ideas in terms of humanity's ability to get big things done, to be able to tackle an existential threat, or if you want, right, you can maybe even take the conspiratorial point of view, right? Why was, Paul Wolfowitz made the head of I think it was the World Bank where he wound up. It's that neocon, the one who got along well with Rumsfeld, what sinister business was behind that? In that case, right, you can also tell a similar story to that. There's a few different dimensions around along which you can kind of cut it. Now, I think the conspiratorial side of things is maybe not as interesting because in the end, it doesn't really do a good job of sort of explaining why the world is the way that it is. But the idea of, in the face of a sort of, species defining moment, humanity does not automatically all come together. Instead, there is an argument and people need to persuade about their way of looking at the world. And everybody's competing. Everybody's trying to take the resources of the world to be able to advance their particular set of interests. And how, who comes out on top? Why do they come out on top? Is it necessarily good that a particular set of things comes out on top? Because, again, there's climate change modeled inside of the world here. I don't want to go too far down this particular path because I suspect people are going to have strong opinions on this and it'll make an argument. But, just to be clear, I'm not presenting this name because it's someone I agree with, but you get these climate change folks like Bjorn Lomborg. And again, I personally find figures like that to be very disingenuous. I think they are making I think what they're doing is they're arguing for a particular position that they know is not popular, and essentially what they're doing is they're trying to just put a spin on it to make it more palatable. But generally, you've got this kind of group of people who are making an argument in terms of saying that the current investment in terms of mitigating climate change is a net economic bad or negative. Like it's reducing flourishing because there's just too many other priorities that we need to worry about in terms of hunger and the ability to sort of meet more pressing direct needs, and that later investment into these measures once the technology has gotten better is better in the long run because it still achieves the same result, but without causing the needless human suffering as a result. Again, I want to be really clear. I am not advocating for that point of view. What I am saying is that there is this is an example of a big species-defining problem, and the fact that there is not consensus around that. And sometimes the disagreement will be genuine. Sometimes it's going to be self-interested. So, you have people who might have a particular economic stake in one particular form of energy production as opposed to another, who are probably going to want to have some say in terms of these individual positions. But you can see once you start talking about this stuff, it's controversial, people start arguing, and maybe the point that you're wanting to make gets pushed aside. And so once you start taking these kinds of stories and putting them in a science fiction wrapping, you're able to ask those kinds of questions. You're able to you're able to put them in a packaging that maybe people put down their defenses because you're not talking about something that they have a strong prior on, and instead they go down the journey and sort of see where it takes them. I mean, this is, again, to bring it back to the topics that we're talking about, War of the Worlds, right? There are some people who will say that is a story quite specifically about a critique of the British Empire. And so I do feel, again, Terra Invicta is a hell of a strategy game. It is one that I think works very, very well as a strategy game. But it would be very surprising to me to find out that Pavonis Interactive was not aware of the fact that they are following in a larger science fiction tradition and have very specifically set out to make something that is worthy of that literary tradition. And I think it's really exciting to play a game like this because, I also think back to some of the science fiction games that I've enjoyed the most, and those will be Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri and Civilization Beyond Earth. And again, they work incredibly well as science fiction strategy games, ones where you could probably ignore the story and enjoy playing the game, right? There's cutscenes, but it's not like you kind of put the experience on hold so that the game can deliver the message, let's say. It feels a little bit more of a natural outgrowth of the events that are taking place inside of the game. And yet, again, because they're science fiction settings, they did actually bother to take the time to tell a story, and it is one that I think is worth telling and one listening to. And they are all the more enjoyable as a result of that. So while this clearly isn't a 4X style game, I do actually think there's not just a literary tradition that Pavonis is following here, but I actually think that there's a tradition in other science fiction games that they are following that really make this game sort of punch above its weight. TM Todi says the way this game models climate change is illustratory in a good way, although people can disagree on how well it's modeled, etc. Yeah, and again, like obviously the stuff that I was talking about in terms of like denialism and some of these other groups is a little bit different from the modeling in that. But like, I think the thing is that like in the end, there's an old saying like all models are wrong, some models are useful. Like in the end, the focus of this game is not on. And by the way, sorry if I didn't reference that before. Isaacson kindly shared her coffee up there. I do recommend you all check it out. So, like, number one, the coffee is just a place where you can see the work that the Eyes of Sin has done. But for those of you who happen to like supporting up-and-coming artists, I will definitely tell you that Eyes of Sin is someone who I have hired for stuff, but they do make a living with their art. And so I do like taking the time to highlight their coffee, because it's something that I've enjoyed. And number one, I just want to, I think one thing that any creator wants is a chance to entertain you. But number two, I do also just kind of like being able to highlight that and say, hey, this is someone who does make a living from this. So if you happen to like it too, you want to give them a little support. This is my way of trying to give back to someone who's created a lot of very useful things for me for the channel. But yeah, to your point, Tody, I agree. Like, the thing is that the point of this game is not the climate change. You might consider the alien invasion maybe like a metaphor, but you can make it anything else. Again, if we're talking about humanity being able to achieve big things, you can also open that up. You're not talking about alien invasions anymore. You could maybe say, I like thinking of Neil Stephenson's Seven Eves, would be an example of a recent story that's trying to pick up that kind of topic. But I think it is helpful. I mean, one of the things that I like is that it, and maybe this is what you're talking about. One of the things I like about it is that climate change in this game is a function of decisions, and those decisions are ones that you can largely understand. So, like, for instance, if we look at economy. The economy priority represents investments in industry and growth. Investing in this priority increases the per capita GDP of the nation by 13.9, inequality by 0.0005, and increases the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere by a small amount. The number of core economic and resource regions in the nation impacts these values. Higher levels of democracy and middle values of cohesion lead to more innovation and higher increases in income. So this is a fact, right? More economic activity does result in increases in greenhouse gases in the world. And this is one thing we observed as a result of the COVID pandemic, was that fewer greenhouse gas emissions because everybody was locked down. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that that is a desirable state of affairs. I don't think everybody wants to be locked down forever. But, there is a reason why we are burning these fossil fuels, and it's to engage in economic activity. Now, you can take a look at spoils. Spoils represents the direct extraction of wealth from an economy, accomplished by avoiding the true costs of obtaining it. This covers such behaviors as crime and corruption, regulatory capture and tax avoidance, economic rents, unmitigated pollution, and exploitation of labor. Completing the spoils priority grants 72.9 directly to the owner of each control point, except for those suffering from a crackdown effect. Increases inequality by 0.055, decreases democracy by 0.001. I'm assuming it does not decrease it by negative 0.001, otherwise corruption increases democracy, and significantly increases global greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. If this priority has a warning symbol, the nation's elites are receiving insufficient spoils to fulfill their desires. Elites in the nation require at least 16% of the investment points directed to them, a value that will decrease with investments in education and democracy, or with very high national cohesion. When the elites are dissatisfied, coups d'etats are more likely to occur. This is the big risk for the US for me, by the way, is the fact that I'm not keeping the elites happy. Now, in this case here, right, you can sort of say it's like, so, economy has an increase in greenhouse gases, but spoils are even higher. And in one sense, like, well, why would you ever increase spoils? Well, number one, maybe you're somebody who does actually need the quick hit. So that is a perfectly reasonable way. I mean, I guess to an extent, if I'm going to make the argument, I already referred to Lombard. I don't recommend you all check him out or that. I think there are better writers on those topics that you can read who do not have fairly well considered responses to. The thing is, the well considered responses are from people who are working in policy and understand the subject very well, and they're talking to a specialist audience, whereas some of these figures are talking to a popular audience, and as a result, they rely on oversimplifications that don't apply once you're actually seriously working out on how to govern. But when it comes to spoils, so like in one sense you can say, oh, well, I'm just playing the greedy person, so that's why I go for spoils. But that's not necessarily the only reason why you do that. In this game here, it's like sometimes there is the cost of doing business. It's a little bit like when you play some strategy games and you go into developing nations. And it's like, oh, okay, well, we'll just like set. Actually, I guess the game Democracy handles this, probably more so Democracy Africa, but I haven't played Democracy 4, and honestly, the developer was a bit of a jerk on Twitter, so I declined the opportunity to play number 4. Jerk to me on Twitter, like not a jerk in general, but like, to be fair, like he's an accomplished guy who generally knows what he's talking about on stuff. It just happens to be that it was an article and I was the expert on the topic and he wasn't, and it was really clear. And I was like, you know what? I really wish you didn't write that. But anyways, neither here nor there. If you like Democracy, please keep playing Democracy. That is a me decision, not an everyone decision. But in this case here, right? Like, in order to get stuff done, sometimes it does actually mean that you have to work not necessarily with the nation as you want it to be, but you have to deal with the nation as it actually is. And as a result, right, you may actually want to put a certain amount into spoils, knowing that you're also going to be putting that in, investment in knowledge and economy and all of the other things that are going to bring about an environment where you need less and less in terms of direction to the spoils. So that's what I'm kind of trying to accomplish in the US here. That's why I've got a custom lineup, is to take those investments out of spoils and put them into knowledge, and just generally hope that I'm able to outpace the negative effects over the positives. Okay. Hang on. We're now it's about the ability to undertake that mission. So yeah, for those, I mean, sure, the people who are here just for the gameplay have probably long since left, but I really did want to take a minute to sort of talk a bit about like the big ideas behind this game, because I actually sort of think that this is personally, I think this is one of the things that I don't hear enough about for Terra Invicta, but I actually really think why this is the sort of game that is like it definitely seems like this is a popular game, and I'm really happy for that. But I really also think that the fact that this works really well as a science fiction story, or like a science fiction experience that is comparable to other good science fiction, I don't think that is a factor that has been highlighted enough about the game. And I think it's actually one of the big reasons why people who are on the fence about it probably should give it a try. Okay, anyways, we did manage to unseat the initiative in Guatemala. I should probably be investing in my counselors. Now, I'm going to leave Nancy Ford alone because we're going to be doing an experiment with her. But Mr. Y. Okay, so he's got 10 XP, 13, 18. I think I kind of need to be at the 20s before I can... yeah. Actually, here's one thing that I could do, because I know I've been ranting at people a lot. An undefended enemy control point in Chile is vulnerable to a purge mission. Tempting. New alliance. Pakistan, under the control of the Initiative and the United Kingdom, have formed an alliance. They will defend each other if attacked, and have the option to join each other's wars of aggression. The two nations will be able to forge closer ties after the 15th of March 2024. I think one thing I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to invest a little bit more in these campaigns. It feels like a waste, though, because how much do I make a month? I really should not be that stingy.
Making our case.
I'll try it once.
I'm here.
Okay. But
We'll be running this place in no
I know
time.
I've been like
Ready.
kind of going solo on a lot of these topics here, but I am a little curious. Like, does anybody here want to share some of their favorite science
Get up.
fiction stories? Or
Ready to go.
if you are a science fiction fan, or if you're not a science fiction fan, like, I would like to hear a little bit more about people's engagement with this stuff. I mean, number one, I'm always looking for new recommendations, but number two, I don't know, like, obvious, like, it's pretty clear that I like this stuff. But I think, equally important to me, I like, oh man, we're really, so I'm assuming this is because a few of my, all this stuff's coming back online. Okay, so I think we'll abandon Uzbekistan first. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I think one of the big things for me too is that I do, if I can, want to, I've got my set of things that I'm interested in. Incidentally, you may be surprised to know that some of the stuff that first got me into science fiction is totally different from what I've been discussing. It was actually Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That was probably one of... Well, no, that's actually not true. I looked up Hitchhiker's Guide because it was a science fiction story. So there were actually other influences first. But it's a big genre. So okay, so it looks like we don't have the we do not have the benefit. So in this case, we would need to renew the advice. Now we are a little bit short on influence as a result of the... Nah, I still think it's worth it. So let's I think we'll continue to advise the United States, even though it does.
I will help them.
I'm going to say that's Colonel Thrashy Bulbous says Starship Troopers. Now, is this in reference to Heinlein's work or also the adaptation of it? Ghost in the Shell is a really good one. Actually, one thing that's great about Ghost in the Shell was I did not care that much for the anime when I first saw it, and then I watched it again after I maybe started watching films a little bit more carefully or critically. And I really liked it the second time I saw it. That is definitely a well done. So I'm going to try and hold on to this. Sorry, there was one other thing I wanted to be taking a look at. So yeah, we are pushing ahead of everybody on the tech. But there's a couple of other things that I wanted to take a look here. Take a look at. But Trigun is quite... I've never seen that one. And then you like the cyberpunk genre. Do you have any favorite cyberpunk stories, Eyes of Sin? Because if you don't, I've got something I want to read to you. Algrin's sci-fi fan in general. Hitchhikers was an early one, and Nintendo games pulled you in too. Again, I love hearing specifics that drive your attention. Star Trek Next Generation. You know, I've only ever seen the Wrath of Khan, and I've seen a couple of the Next Generation films. So I saw, I think, First Contact, and then there was one which had a really memorable shot of like Data jumping between two halves of a splitting like spaceship. Which seemed... I think that one might have been called Nemesis. It was pretty forgettable, that one, to be honest, but my old boss cut his teeth on that, so I did work on Battlestar Galactica for a little bit, which obviously was a Ron Moore thing, and he's of course since gone on to make a great science fiction show for Apple TV Plus, for those of you that have a way of watching that, called For All Mankind. And if you haven't seen, I have not actually seen the third season yet, but If you haven't watched it, I think it's great. And actually, that's another one which seemed a little bit like Soma. For those of you wondering what I'm doing here, I'm just writing down the science values again so I can update my estimates of what people's contributions are. Anyway, that was one in the first season. It seemed to be that there were a lot of critics who were a little too cool for school and did not really respect it. But I noticed that there was a Wired article recently that sort of said that For All Mankind is like the best in class science fiction show, and I'm inclined to agree with it. Where was it? Book, and then you watch the movie. Book got you into reading science fiction. Babylon 5 got you into watching it. Oh, cool. Actually, cinematographer I worked with, Carl Herman, got to meet J. Michael Straczynski and talked a bit about Babylon 5. Again, I've not personally seen it, but that's another science fiction. Apparently the stuff that I know the best for TV, at least in terms of like stuff I've been connected to, actually does often seem to be sci-fi, and I'm totally fine with that. One question I would have for you too is how you feel about the Paul Verhoeven Starship Troopers as an adaptation of the Heinlein book, as opposed to Aliens, which I actually think is probably a better adaptation of Starship Troopers as a adaptation of the story. But that does not necessarily mean that Starship Troopers the movie isn't doing something, worthwhile on its own. I know that's a movie that people really like. So you like the tabletop games for Cyberpunk, but The Fifth Element was fun as too. Oh man, I never even thought of The Fifth Element as counting as Cyberpunk, but I guess it does. Tabletop Cyberpunk was big for me too. Yeah, I only really know about Shadowrun, although I do now have Cyberpunk Red. Akira, Willow, Flight of the Navigator. I've actually not heard of Flight of the Navigator. That's one I'm going to check out. And Omega Knight Red says the Heliconia trilogy by Brian Aldiss was a good read about life in a binary star system. That's neat. Actually, I was going to say I'm familiar with trinary solar systems because I not recently, I guess it's been 2 years now, but somebody lent me a copy of Three Body Problem. So Last Starfighter 2, good one. Okay, sorry. So I got these things written down. So first of all, just as an estimate, one thing I want to check as an estimate is how good is this estimate? And for this, I know what my exact value is. So we've got a difference of 98 between Mission to the Asteroids from the first one to the second. So that's 98. It was December 2nd to the 16th, so that's 14 days. So in this case, this is actually estimating that we've got 7 science per day, which clearly is not the case. We're putting 5.4, so this surprises me a little bit that I'm getting that number. But I'll try that for the other two as well. So we've got 366 minus 268, so that's 98. Divide that by 14, that's estimating 7 again. So fair enough. Now it could also be that this is taking the raw generating 23.8 daily. So if I were to take that and divide that by 4, yeah, I get 595. So even then, that's a little bit off. Okay. Well, again, we'll try that. And then 95, we just divide that straight by 14. Okay, 678. So that's a little bit closer to the value. So that's the reason why I like doing that test is that actually kind of lets me know this way that I'm estimating enemy research. At least in my case, it's actually overestimating the rate at my research rate, and that's helpful to that's kind of helpful to keep in mind. So in this case here, the estimate seems to be about 4 for the Academy, and if I compare that to Exodus, wait, is that really 4? 422 minus 366. 56 divided by 14. 4. Huh. Okay, so we'll try that for the other categories too. So we've got Exodus is the one to beat. So 292 minus 186. That's 106 divided over 14 days. So that implies 757. That is actually a bit of a worry if they're accelerating that quickly. And then finally, we've got 54 from 0. That's a 385. So it is definitely possible that Exodus is redoubling its efforts in the middle section. So there's a reason why I do this, and that's so that I can notice changes like that and respond. So it's what I want to maybe see here is to make sure that there's the gap. So right now we're 366 to their 242. If after 14 days that gap is closed, even if the individual, well, yeah, but I mean, going from 4 to 7 suggests to me that there's a difference in percentages being assigned, not that there's a rounding error. Like, I'm willing to accept some rounding errors, but like that's almost twice what was in there before. And I think, and especially given the fact that the implied research that's being put in for solid core fission systems, the fact that the Academy is outpacing Exodus alone, to me, that is a much bigger signal that they are putting more investment into this second pillar than than a rounding error. Again, this just comes back to the, develop a hypothesis, test it, see what's going on. Because again, we don't know what the divisions of our enemies are. That's why I like taking the time to sort of do these measures, and also just to compare against my own measures to see whether or not these are useful tools for being able to find out what the truth is. So I'm reasonably happy that I did pull back my investment in terms of my own council engineering projects. It does mean that we'll be making some slower progress, unfortunately, but we are still going to be dominating the world research agenda, and we now have the tools that we need to be able to try and sort of flex our muscle a bit. All right, moving right along.
Offering assistance.
I'm not going to make that a permanent mission, but I definitely want to see. I want to see us invest pretty heavily in our territories. We should also be doing a little bit more propaganda in the United States. Oh! A rocket carrying a payload for the Resistance exploded and failed to reach orbit. Gone in an instant. Now this is kind of interesting because we don't actually have any space assets, but I'll take the hint. Or hit, not hint. Alright, moving right along. Did our
We're winning their hearts and minds.
Mars arrive?
Public opinion remains unmoved.
Alright, well, I think that's a permanent assignment for you. So we did send the probe, I thought, but I can't remember how long ago that was. Project complete, Alien Origin. We have completed the Alien Origin project. There are a multitude of theories about whether the aliens hail from. I think it should say where here. We have completed the Alien Origin project. There are a multitude of theories about whether the aliens hail from, running the gamut from plausible to absurd. Maddeningly, our further study of alien debris cannot quite be said to rule anything out. Our long-range scanners have confirmed that, yes, there is a large and strikingly regular-shaped mass of similar materials in the deeper reaches of this solar system, strongly suggesting the presence of some manner of alien installation. However, our scans have also confirmed that not all of the substances within the debris are available locally, as it were. Thus, though our visitors do indeed have an industrial-scale presence within Sol's orbit, they almost certainly did not originate from it. We have completed the Research Alien Origin objective. We have significantly extended our abilities to watch and gather intelligence on the further reaches of our solar system. And in the process, we have discovered a number of alien HABs, artificial habitats, in the Kuiper Belt. It seems our visitors have been here for some time. Observation of the alien HABs, along with re-examination of older telescope imagery taken before the alien arrival on Earth, has provided a much clearer picture of local alien operations. At some point in the last several years, the aliens built their HABs and launched the ship that crashed down onto Earth. Given that A, it seems impossible that complex life could have evolved in the frozen outer reaches of our solar system, and B, the alien ship appears to be partially constructed from material of extrasolar origin, we believe that the aliens arrived here from another star system. We have 3 leading theories as to how they could have accomplished this. Sorry, 1 second here. Okay. Sorry. Okay, my apologies. We have 3 leading theories as to how they could have accomplished this. 1. They traveled to our solar system via a slower-than-light interstellar spacecraft. Such a craft would in all probability be very large. It would require huge quantities of energy for propulsion and life support, and might well have taken generations to make the journey. We have thus far seen no evidence of such an alien mothership. 2. The aliens, or their ancestors, arrived long ago and have been recently awakened from hibernation, or they have been constructed somehow from raw materials. We currently have no explanation for how this might be possible. The aliens have developed some means of faster-than-light transport, such as an... I have no idea what that is, but I'm going to look it up. Alcubierre drive? Like I said, this is one of the cool things about it, is that it does actually take its tech seriously. I guess it's bière if it's French, but Alcubierre is a speculative warp drive idea according to which a spacecraft could achieve apparent faster-than-light travel by contracting space in front of it and expanding space behind it, under the assumption that a configurable energy density field lower than that of vacuum, that is negative mass, could be created. Proposed by theoretical physicist Miguel Alcubierre in 1994, the Alcubierre drive is based on a solution of Einstein's field equations. Since those solutions are metric tensors, the Alcubierre drive is also referred to as the Alcubierre metric. They've developed such a drive or traversable wormholes. While this theory might seem fanciful, the possibility of long-dormant aliens in the outermost regions of our solar system seems equally unlikely. Our imagery analysis have also identified a structure on the alien surface base emitting highly unusual energy readings that do not appear to match any known form of power generation. Once again, our research has left us with more questions than answers, but evidence suggests that the alien HABs represent a key part of their logistics network. If we intend to oppose their operations, their HABs should be a primary target. Okay, so alien methods and salvaging alien technology are sort of our next priorities. Also just want to take a second here. I mean, there's a number of things that I want to get done. Was it alien methods? I thought it was alien materials that we needed to research. Nope, alien methods. All evidence suggests that the aliens are abducting human subjects, but why? Are they trying to communicate, studying us, hunting us? Or do they have some other purpose, something so truly alien that it is wholly beyond our understanding? We have many questions and few answers. For now, all we have to go on is the abductions themselves. Our analysts have proposed a more detailed study of the abduction data in the hope of discovering some patterns or avenues of research. Okay, so that is our next priority. Generally, I'm trying to follow the story missions where I can, and that will be done on April 15th, 2024, so about half a year.
By the numbers.
Excellent. So this was one we were really considering as a possibility that could fail, but our assault on the alien life forms in the Kunming region was successful. We estimate we reduced alien flora and fauna in the region by about 20%, but it's likely that some remains. We lost Kazakhstan. Okay, that's fine. We knew that was coming. And the initiative now controls the UK. It's always kind of interesting to see how. It's always kind of interesting to see how the initiative aligns its priorities. Okay, we control Guatemala again. It has some implications for my control points, but I'm still going to run with it. It appears we have some supporters in Canada, making it a good target for us to control. I agree, but there is that small little business of, trying to actually break in. Okay, I think we'll get you to advise the U.S.
Offering
again.
support.
Standing by for orders.
So I am
Standing by for
slightly
orders.
curious if we were to try, like if we threw everything into a crackdown, we might have some luck. But I really don't think that's worth it. This honestly feels like a bit of a waste of time, so maybe we don't try and establish a presence in China, and we...
I will try to sway the public.
Standing by.
We look to our own territory again. Ruby Burn. So again, if we try and purge in Canada, not much hope. If we try a coup d'etat... I don't exactly want to cause unrest in Canada because that's something I want to inherit for myself. But I could try a coup in El Salvador.
Subverting the government.
Reporting in.
And let's investigate the alien
Headed
activity
there now.
again. There's some goodies here, but maybe we put some points into administration. Just kind of keeping conscious of this number up here. Okay, I'm gonna live with those. And I probably need to
counsel.
think about wrapping up reasonably soon, but let's at least finish off this one more turn and think about what our next few steps are going to be. I probably should have checked R&D. We are still ahead by quite a margin, but I am going to want to, next time we get an assignment for counselors, I'm gonna do the exact calculations. So I'm going to ignore everything but the flags. Except
The
that
people
one.
will come to our side.
No.
Failed.
Public sentiment is increasingly with us.
Okay, North Korea and the Benelux are now allies. North Korea and Poland are allies. North Korea and Malaysia. Baltic states and Russia have ended their rivalry. Violent revolution has
We
overthrown
found something.
the government of the Central African Republic. Small xenology bonus for looking at the abductions. And Peru has undergone a coup d'etat. Okay, so we want to come down like a ton of bricks on the initiative here. Okay, so first things first, I'm bad at remembering these days to... Oh, we're gonna have to make some choices about... we're gonna have to make some choices about our Central American locations. Okay, so first things first, I want to take a look at the state of play as far as tech is concerned. So we're now on to January 16th, so this is after a month. I don't know if the game specifically does proper years, or if it... I haven't really been paying attention around the 30th. It's like, I don't know if there's 28 days in February. But I think as long as the denominator is consistent, I get enough of a picture. Like, one of the things that I need to worry about here, I don't necessarily need to care whether or not the number that I get matches this number. What matters is that as long as I do the even comparison among all of the research participants, as long as I'm dividing by the same number, that'll give me an idea about who's advancing fast enough. Okay, so we're at 944 for mission to the asteroids. We are at 590 for space mining and refining. That's a pretty high priority for us, although again, we also need the boost to be able to launch it, so I'm not exactly in a rush to see that happen. If we research this tech and we don't have enough boost, then we're just enabling Project Exodus to take all of the resources from us. And the Academy is at 521, so I'm still keeping track of the Academy because they're close enough to Exodus that they may outrun them. Academy's at 346 on space mining and 388 for Exodus, and then finally 196 versus 189. Okay. So in this case, there's 31 days in December. The denominator is gonna be 31, even if the game does 30-day months. So we had 944. Well, the first thing I want to do is just count the... I actually don't even need to worry about the daily value. So we raised by 224. The Academy is at 521 minus the previous value of 386. So they went up by 135. And the Exodus project's at 568, so taken away from their value on December the 16th, which was 422, they increased by 146. So at least as far as the first pillar is concerned, we're doing fine. So similarly, we are currently at 590. We subtract that by 366, our previous value. So unsurprisingly, we get 224 again. Now these next two should be pretty instructive for me, because it'll give me a better indication as to whether or not the AI has been messing around with its research values. So the Academy's at 135 again. And then the Exodus 292. So in this case, they're under-investing in this at 96, unless I'm getting this number wrong. No. Okay, finally, we've got 312 that we're putting in. We subtract that from our previous 95, so unsurprising. Oh no, actually that is surprising. So we're at 217 here. Now that's not a huge surprise, because you can see that it's 5412 as opposed to 5584, or decimal 584 probably is the better. That's the main difference I'm looking at. But So I got 196 for the Academy, so I would have guessed that they'd actually been putting more effort into this one compared to their 57. Yeah, so they're at 139 here. And then the 189 from Exodus compared to their 54, and they're at 135. So final thing I want to do is I say, okay, if I'm doing 217 here, if I divide that by 31, I get 7. And if I take 139, I think was the larger of the two. So that's a 448. So one question I do have is if I say if I just do an even division for everyone, I'm gonna risk this for a little while because again I've got a big bonus. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm augmenting both alien methods and management research. Now, the reason I feel that I can do this right now is because I have enough of a gap between me and my rivals that even if they had perfect knowledge of the fact that I've been pulling back a little bit on the research, they're not going to be able to overtake me in the one period. Or at least they're not going to be able to do so in a way that would force me to sort of reverse my position. And so this is going to be a chance for me to experiment a little bit. I left a note. I've got, I don't have a tablet in front of me, so I'm not able to I normally have furious notes for every game that I play, scribbled in notes because I can easily delete them. But I've got some graph paper in front of me with a bunch of my science calculations here. And essentially what I'm going to do is I want to see, because the estimates that I get by dividing by the number of days seem to be overestimating the amounts of science that well, okay, that's not entirely true. They seem to be overestimating the number that I'm taking as truth. I'm now going to be saying is I'm in a comfortable enough position to run an experiment to see whether or not the estimates that I'm getting from my rivals are if I'm getting freaked out by them more than I should. Basically just I'm getting too panicky over the idea of something if I were to be looking at my numbers here, I'd say they're about 2.5 points higher than they should be. So if they're 2.5 points higher for Exodus and the Academy, then it means I should be splitting them evenly. I might even be able to invest a little bit more on council engineering projects, but I'm probably not going to do that. But that's going to be one that I try because I'm in a position where I'm comfortable enough to do that at the moment. Okay. In Honduras, Commander, we might okay. I will consider it. Let's wrap up. So clearly the first priority is to retake the control point from the initiative. Fascinating. So clearly we want to destabilize first.
Standing by for orders.
Huh.
Ready for orders.
I'm here.
Ready for orders.
Your orders? Cracking down.
This may
Your
not work
orders?
for us.
Lending my expertise.
The next step here is I gotta find some stuff to sacrifice for my control points. think we'll just leave that at Panama for now, but I'm probably going to have to make some tougher decisions as we move on. I'm not too hopeful about the Mexico situation, to be honest. That was probably a spot that I opened myself up to some retaliation on. Okay, let's review the events. So Azerbaijan and the UK are now allies. Upper Guinea and Iran are now allies. Iraq and France are now allies. Ukraine and Russia have ended their rivalry. And the Baltic states and Belarus have ended their rivalry. So I do need to engage with other factions a little bit more. But the thing is that I've had other priorities, and I've not really felt the need to get in line with people. I was hoping to throw my weight around a bit more with the research agenda, but we really just, like, we've taken our position. We're not actually picking the stuff yet. I also need to start thinking about how big of a threat the servants really are. But I think the priority sort of remains Luna. So I think we had said that we were going to go for the Sea of Tranquility. Or did I? I think I was going to go for that because it was the only place where we could get noble metals. So I think it was going to be these two. Although, to be honest, like, that's not a volatiles isn't exactly a number to write home about. But yeah, no, I feel reasonably secure in establishing those. Oddly enough, I do have enough to found an outpost from it. I just don't have enough to start mining, and that sort of, to me, seems to be that's kind of the whole reason why we're doing it. So I'm okay holding back a little bit. Essentially, we wait until March 13th, 2024, and then we set a mining operation on the moon. Ideally 2, but I don't think I'm gonna have the boost for that. And then the hope for that is essentially that we will have considerably lower boost costs to establish more space-based industry. Parallel to that, we are going to be working on another branch of the tech tree, actually probably after space mining and refining. So one approach that I may want to consider, sort of to help sort of so Great Nations is wonderful and all, but 25,000 to achieve that's a long time to wait. So maybe what I want to try in, like, as an intermediate move would be to do the Central American Confederation. So this would be, we've already got We Are Not Alone, so then we could do Arrival International Relations, which will lead to unity movements. Now, unity movements is a pretty expensive tech, but I think one that's worth it. So Central American Confederation will allow me to sort of combine those territories that I wind up will be those territories that I sort of wind up abandoning anyway. What I think that's eventually going to lead to is, you know, when I go to Great Nations, that's just going to give me something a little bit easier, like after United North America. Once it finally comes down to Greater United North America, I'm just already going to have a large entity that I can work with. But obviously, all of that is sort of a future consideration. If anything, like, the more I can do to just sort of get my my cap up as far as control points, that would be the ideal. Especially because I do want to be opportunistic in terms of taking territory. So if Canada becomes available to break a control point for, I want to be able to do that. And I certainly want to make sure that I'm not giving up Mexico to the initiative, and that's going to mean, things like not restoring this to an abandoned status once it's gone. Again, I'm more willing to do that with Central American nations than I am others. But again, this is stuff we'll figure out as we play through. But I will thank you all for watching. I know in the second half of this there was a bit more talk and less gameplay, but I think my opinion of Terra Invicta is very much the same as it was before. I think this is a very, I love how ambitious this game is, and I really like the fact that it is an awesome strategy game in addition to something that I actually think quite a bit about in terms of just it, the whole reason why I've been thinking about Alpha Centauri and Civilization as science fiction stories in addition to being science fiction games is actually largely driven by the fact that Terra Invicta is the way that it is. Also, I need to start reading the quotes in the settings menu. So, and beware not to lift up your eyes to heaven and see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, and be drawn away and worship them and serve them. Deuteronomy 4:19. Sorry, not back to game. I want to go to the main menu. I am going to find somebody to host tonight, so I would love it if you, those of you that are still around, to hang out and find another worthy soul to host. No problem, Vanguard Master. I'm glad that you enjoyed it enough to hang around. Does anybody know... so there are a few people playing Terra Invicta, but I don't really know any of the Terra Invicta streamers. So is there anybody who catches your attention, or somebody who you thought has done this game well before? Failing that, we do have Valiant Cheese, who's currently playing Into the Breach, which I think is a very good turn-based game, and I suspect would have some overlap with with a Terra Invicta audience. But I am kind of curious if anybody has some opinions on. Okay, I'm going to start hosting Valiant Cheese. If somebody does have a recommendation for a Terra Invicta streamer, I'm not opposed to it, but I also want to keep things moving. So just a quick reminder to everybody in terms of what the plan is going to be. I will be sure to get a description as to Valiant Cheese and why they're worth hanging out with out before we send them over. There's going to be a disruption in the streaming schedule. So Wednesday, I'm going to be back to Industries of Titan. I know a number of you have been really looking forward to that, so your time has come. But I am going to be catching a flight on Thursday, and I'm probably not going to be coming back until Tuesday evening. And so this means that there will be a stream for Wednesday, but Friday and Monday stream will not be there. And I do apologize for that, because I am actually looking to make more progress in Terra Invicta. It's why it's the fact I haven't been doing Monday streams for last week that's why I haven't made more progress in this game. But needless to say, Monday is pretty much dedicated to Terra Invicta. It seems to be dedicated to Hooded Horse at this point, but I am going to do more Terra Invicta, and if I get a chance to do it on like a weekend or something like that, I will be sure to let you know. But anyways, we'll carry on as best as we can. And then as far as Valiant Cheese, because I probably have like 45 seconds before the raid is done, Valiant Cheese is a game developer. He's worked with Double Fine on games like Day of the Tentacle and a little bit of work for Grim Fandango. He develops his own thing. He's currently doing a Minesweeper sort of spin-off called Bone Sweeper. He's a very big fan of Into the Breach, and he's currently playing that. So I will leave you all in his capable hands. I hope you have a good time, and we'll see you all in the next one. See ya.